Christmas gifts for her guys.
Yes.
Good evening. If you desire to address the City Council during the meeting tonight, please complete a request to speak form available at the entrance and present it to the City Clerk. Speakers will be called upon by the Mayor at the appropriate time. At this time, I will convene the City Council, and the City Council is a successor agency to the Community Redevelopment Agency. Tonight we will have an invocation given by Pastor Alger from Azure Hill Seventh-day Adventist Church. And our city manager will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Madam Mayor, as I entered the room this evening, I looked at two things. The pictures there for the Charter Council and the pictures of our current council. There's a significant change that has taken place. The thing that is constant in life is God. And so now we turn to Him. Let's pray. God of the universe, we thank you for the opportunity to serve this great city of Grand Terrace. We thank you for the residents. We thank you for your presence among us in good times and in time of pain and loss, and we seek your continued presence with us. I ask for your blessing to be upon the residents of Grand Terrace, to grant them peace and calm in the midst of this crazy world. I ask for your blessing on our city leaders who give generously of their time and talents and work hard for the prosperity, security, and development of our community. Grant them strength, grant them patience and wisdom, and the right words to speak in time of need. Tonight, the council meets to conduct the business of our city. We seek your presence. Remove personal agendas and give a right spirit that we may work together for the common good of the people we serve, and bless the decisions and directions as they are chosen and as they are implemented. We seek to honor you, God, and in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Alger. Mr. Duffy. May we have roll call, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor. Councilmember Hussey.
Present.
Councilmember Wilson. Councilmember Mitchell.
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Robles.
Present.
Mayor McNabb.
Present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Tonight we have a special presentation by the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. This is our quarterly statistic report. Tonight we have Lieutenant O'Brien who will be giving us this report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Council. Good evening. For the record, my name is Robert O'Brien. I'm a lieutenant with the San Bernardino Sheriff's Department. And tonight I'll be giving you the third quarter of 2015 crime statistics, and this is everything contained between January 1st and September 30th of this year. So if we take a look at our Part 1 and Part 2 crimes, we'll notice that crime is a little higher than what it has been in 2014. And this is actually very consistent throughout the entire county. Overall, Part 1 crime, which consists of these crimes, which are the most serious classified by the FBI, murder, manslaughter, rape, robbery, assault, burglary, theft, and grand theft auto, represent about an almost 18% increase. Robbery is up about 4 cases. Burglary is up about 18 cases. Simple assault is up 9 cases. Aggravated assault, up 1 case, and theft or larceny is up 5 cases. And again, this is between the same period of time in 2014 as compared to what it is this year. Our Part 2 crimes, which is everything that's not mentioned as a Part 1 crime, is up overall about 18% as well. And as I stated, this is very consistent throughout the entire county. Crime is on the increase. If we take a look at our calls for service, our deputies are very busy. This year to date, they've had just a little over 10,000 calls, actually 10,600 calls. And this represents calls for service not only when somebody picks up the phone to call 911, or what we deem as a reactive call, but proactive calls. Our deputies stopping people, stopping drivers for citations or driving under the influence, things that people, the citizens, don't call into our dispatch center for. And this is about a 15% increase from 2014. Now, if we take a look at those reactive calls for service, those calls that our citizens of Grand Terrace are calling us for, we see about 314 calls for service from 2014. Just a very slight increase. And we categorize all of those calls by priorities. Emergency being the highest priority and priority 4 being the lowest priority. And I think I covered this the last meeting, but an emergency call would be something that truly is an emergency, say an injury traffic collision, somebody holding a knife to someone, whether they're self or someone else, whereas a priority 4 call might be a loud music complaint or a barking dog call. So again, 10,600 calls for service this year, 3,600 calls that people called our dispatch center for, which equates to just a little under 7,000 calls where our deputies are out conducting proactive enforcement, where they're going out seeking those criminals who might be walking around the neighborhood. I showed this last couple presentations, and I'll show it again. It is a very valuable slide, and it is very consistent with what we've seen in our prior presentations, and that's the height call volume of the day is about 1 o'clock p.m., just after lunch. We continue to see that. We've seen that since I got here in January, and the trend seems to continue that the heightened call volume seems to be right in the early afternoon. We use this data to adjust our staffing levels accordingly. We have more than one deputy. I think everybody knows that. We have more than one deputy assigned to Grand Terrace. We also were allocated by yourselves to use some extra money for overtime enforcement or some extra enforcement, and we adjust or we schedule those extra duties accordingly, and this would be one way that we do that. Our deputy reports, since crime is on the rise, our calls for service are on the rise, it only makes sense that the reports that our deputies take is on the rise as well. And they're up about 20%. About 130 calls for services compared to this time last year. Arrests and bookings. Our arrests and bookings are also up. About 37 arrests, which is the blue bar. I know that's the legend is kind of hard to read, but the blue bar representing arrests is up about 37 arrests from 2014, and our bookings, the orange bar, up about 39. So not only is crime on the rise, not only are our deputies busier, not only are our deputies taking more reports, but our deputies are arresting and booking more people as well. Now we get into some of our response times, and our response times this quarter are very favorable compared to what I've reported in the past. We've seen about overall for emergency calls for service, about a 3-minute and 25-second decrease in our response times, which is very good. Now, do keep in mind that these are averages of averages of averages, so the data isn't exact, but it does give us a good idea as to where we are. Our priority 1 calls are also very close to where they should be, being 9 seconds taken off from what it was in 2014. And overall, once our deputy goes on scene to the moment they clear, it's cut down by about 55 seconds, putting that deputy back in service that much faster. Our response times by priority are actually very similar as well. About the only items that we've seen an increase in are some of our lower priority crimes. Our priority 2 and priority 4 crimes seeing more than a minute increase to them. We can attribute that because our deputies are taking a little bit more time trying to solve those higher priority crimes. Is this thing buzzing, or is it just me? Okay. Our deputies, if they're on a priority 1 call or on an emergency call, their priority is to make sure everything is safe and secure to the citizens of Grand Terrace before they can move on to another call. So as a result, some of those lower priority calls may end up having to hold a little bit of time before a deputy gets to them. Traffic collision investigations were up by 5 total collisions between this point in 2014, which is not very bad at all. Some of you may have seen some extra traffic enforcement as of late in the city. We do have some motorcycle officers who are spending some time in the city enforcing traffic laws in some of our problem areas. So hopefully you have seen those out and about. And I do have some more to go over, but I'm going to stop there and take any questions that the council might have before I do.
Council have any questions of the lieutenant? Councilmember Hussey.
Hey, Lieutenant, thanks for the report. Just one question. You said you're moving deputies around for peak time, and there might be some overtime. Are we going to have that extra coverage during New Year's Eve also?
We're running into a couple different staffing problems, specifically surrounding New Year's Eve. However, yes, that is the goal, is to add at least one more deputy to Grand Terrace on New Year's Eve.
Any others? Go ahead, Lieutenant.
Okay. I know in the past I brought some people with me, introduced them. I have done that. This is Detective Grant Ward with our station, recently assigned to our station from our homicide division. He comes with a lot of valuable experience and tools. So I do want to introduce Grant, but I also introduce different facets of the Sheriff's Department, which I'm going to go a little differently tonight. And instead, I'm going to read a statement pertaining to the chain of events that happened last week. I'm sure everybody in the community has seen the news, seen the events, and probably has a lot of questions on their mind, as do I. But I wanted to read this statement to you to reassure the public that, number one, there is no credible threat to Southern California right now from any terrorist organization, and two, not to let fear overcome our lives. So if you will indulge me just a few minutes, I'll read through this, and I will ask any questions afterwards. Ladies and gentlemen, I stand before you tonight as a humble servant of San Bernardino County. In the past, I've stood before and introduced you to various aspects of the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department. Tonight, I'd like to do something a little different and make a statement. The terrorist attack that occurred last week will forever be remembered. It was the worst terrorist attack since September 11, 2001. As I'm sure you know, 14 local citizens perished and 21 others were injured at what was initially thought to be a workplace violence incident. It turned to terrorism when all the pieces of the puzzle came together. This incident tested local law enforcement in and around San Bernardino area, and through this test, the world saw them pass with flying colors. Deputies and officers from every law enforcement agency within San Bernardino and Riverside counties responded and assisted in whichever way they could. Throughout the news, you've heard of heroic actions that citizens and law enforcement officers portrayed during this incident. Too many to name. Lieutenant Mike Madden of the San Bernardino Police Department being the first police officer on scene. The unknown deputy sheriff who reassured occupants of the building he was evacuating by saying, "I'll take a bullet before you do, any damn day." These are just a few examples of the actions of officers and deputies that day, and over the next few days, you will hear more of them to come. These actions are from the same deputies who patrol the city of Grand Terrace today. The same level of service this city of Grand Terrace receives. Now is the time to be vigilant. Now is the time to keep an open eye. These terrorists lived amongst us, unnoticed, in the city of Redlands, which is very nearby. This could very well happen to anywhere in the United States today. Yes, I am sorry to say they could be living in the city of Grand Terrace, and nobody would ever know it until it was too late. No matter what you think about it, this is not a race issue, this is not a religion issue, this is not a gun control issue. This is about keeping our community safe, keeping Grand Terrace safe. Now is the time to say something if you see something. It's important not to let fear rule our lives. As I said, there are currently no credible threats to the Southern California area, and it is vital that we go about our daily lives and not let fear get the best of us. Replace fear with vigilance. Now is the time to be vigilant. I couldn't be more proud of the men and women of law enforcement who responded that day, my partners, my peers, my staff, your deputies. Their actions speak for themselves and speak volumes at that. But let us not forget the 14 people who perished that day. They will forever be remembered. And I'll conclude with one simple quote that I read this morning. The only way to vanquish cowardice is to brandish courage. Hashtag SB Strong. And I will open it up for any questions if you might have them.
Thank you, Lieutenant. I appreciate that statement. Does council have any questions of the Lieutenant at this time? Councilmember Hussey.
Lieutenant, thank you for that statement. God bless you guys for running into the situation and protecting lives. I'm proud to be a council member. I'm proud to have the San Bernardino County Sheriff on here, and I'm proud to what the Inland Empire and their police agencies, the first responders, what they did that day. They all came together as one family and took care of everybody. So I really appreciate all the work that the men and women are doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing more as more information is brought forth and what that would mean to the city of Grand Terrace and how we best stay safe here. And I'm imagining that through this whole process, you've been communicating with our city manager as to whether there are credible threats to our city as you find information. Is that true?
Absolutely. And as I said, there is no credible threat to anywhere in Southern California right now. The moment that Grand Terrace is even mentioned, yes, the city manager would be apprised of it immediately.
Okay, I appreciate that. Councilmember Wilson.
Obviously, it was a very sad day for everybody. Terrible waste. I was really impressed the way all of the police officers that were involved gathered together like one fine oiled machine and worked off each other. And as soon as one started to bristle slightly, the others picked up on it, and they were right there working, as hard as they possibly could to keep us all safe. And we were at least I was only physically about a mile away from there. And I felt much better as I detoured way around it as things were progressing. So I was super impressed about how everybody worked together, and we can see the strength that we gain by the combined forces and the way the Sheriff's Department is set up in order to protect us, the clients of the various cities that don't have city police forces. Because worked together and put all your strength there, and yet kept us in good shape. And it was a tough day, and it's not going to be forgotten for a long time. But thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Well, I was going to save this for my council remarks, but I was born and raised in San Bernardino, and I was a county employee for 25 years, and my husband was a county employee for 36 years. When I got the call from my son-in-law to check in on us, because at first it was said it was a Planned Parenthood facility, and he knows that being pro-life, and I had done a peaceful vigil there recently, he wanted to be sure that I was at home. But the consequences of that act on the heels of Colorado Springs, I know because I went to the doctor for a scheduled visit, my blood pressure shot up 20 points. So wondering what happened to this country, what's going on. Then I put it on and it says Inland Regional Center, so then the location changed significantly. But then later on, going to Kaiser, and there was emergency vehicles still on the I-10, and I was having a one-day procedure done, and the doctors were barely getting word, and this was about 12:30 of what was going on, and they were in code green. They were expecting to get some casualties. It was an extremely eerie day. And then on the way home to realize that this was targeting public health employees, county employees, then I became very concerned about some of the folks that I worked with. Trudy Raimundo started actually as a college intern working for me and others at special districts, and she has done phenomenally well. She is now the director of public health, and I was concerned because in her leadership role she had to be there. So later on it turns out she was there, and being a native, wondering what the connections were, and Robert Adams, who is Pat Vining Cronin's son-in-law, and Sumner works for the training center, and the father does the sheriff's food services, becomes more and more how we have all these interrelationships. It was very, very traumatic to see Trudy describe on CNN and in news accounts how the events played out. And it is incredibly difficult to understand how much hatred you can have for others and your coworkers that had shown so much concern for you and the fact that you had a child and gave you a baby shower. But it is just truly impressive as I watched the news and my Twitter account of all the different news sources of what the fine law enforcement and fire services have done. It was extremely, extremely impressive. And I want to thank you as a representative of the law enforcement community today. It was, at the end of the day, it is very comforting to know we have that kind of protection. Thank you.
Thank you.
One last thing I'm going to ask. Since there is so much concern going forward, if there are any tips that our sheriff's department can give that we can get to our residents for how to stay safe and how to keep informed, I think that would be very useful.
Yeah, and I think the best tip that we can give right now, you've heard our sheriff say it on TV, you've heard Police Chief Jared Bergwan say it as well. If you see something, say something. Don't think that if you say something, it's going to cause grief to you or somebody else. If you see something, say something, because you just never know.
Councilmember Mitchell.
And what means phone numbers? How does one say something? Who do they contact?
You can contact the Sheriff's Department emergency or non-emergency lines. Emergency if you deem it's an emergency. The FBI also has a 1-800 number for tips that the public might feel is related to their investigation in San Bernardino as well.
Thank you.
Thank you again for your report. I appreciate you being here. We'll move to our consent calendar. The following consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the City Council at one time without discussion Any council member, staff member, or citizen may request removal of an item from the consent calendar for discussion. This time I have no request in front of me. However, I'm going to request that item 3 and item 5 be removed from the consent calendar. Are there any other items that council members would like to remove?
No, I was wanting 5 also taken off.
I'll entertain. Go ahead.
I'll motion to move the remaining.
Okay. So
I'll second it.
motion and second to remove the balance. Please vote. Revote. Please vote again.
Motion passes 4 ayes, 1 no. Council members Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNabb voted aye. Councilmember Hussey voted no.
Thank you. All right, so item number 3 is an amendment of on-call traffic engineer services contract with transportation engineering planning. We have an item that is related to this contract, I believe, which is item number 10, which is our Palm Avenue, Van Buren Street traffic measures and recommendations and request for approval. I'm going to ask my colleagues if we can take this item after item number 10. Any objection to that? Okay, hearing none, we'll move item number 3 after item number 10 on our agenda. And we'll go to item number 5, which is request by the Grand Terrace Little League for waiver of facility use fees related to use of Pico Park. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, Mayor. For the record, G. Harold Duffy, the city manager. Staff, or I should say myself, I did receive a request from the Grand Terrace Little League requesting that we waive the city council waived the $5 fee per employee. It was a total of $625 for the year. And they did provide me a list of equipment which they had to purchase as part of the process, and they did reference that they had some vandalism that occurred. After reviewing that information, one of the things they said in the report was that one of the requests for waiving the fees, one of the primary emphasis is to try and keep the fees as low as possible. So one of the things I did, I provided the council with a quick list of Little League fees throughout the region. For example, I think you have it in front of you. In Riverside, the T-ball fees are $100 and Pee-wee's $125, junior $140, and the range goes there. In Fontana, T-ball is $60, regular baseball is $100. In Colton, the fees, they said, in February, so it'll be $125. The Grand Terrace T-ball fees are $65 and $90 for baseball and softball across the board. And so on the back of the sheet also too, here's one of the, I think is an important factor. In the city of Redlands, they demonstrate how their Little League, not the city, but the Little League organization, how much money they charge versus how much money it costs for them to operate the program. So where their fees might be, I think, $100 to $115, the average cost for a child is about $200. So they're subsidizing the fee by all the parents and stuff like that. And so we've seen, obviously, over the last couple of years, a lot of city park and recreations programs just go to basic maintenance, and the community's picked up those fees. So even in the point where the community is picking up the fees, there still is some basic services which you think about, what is the alternative? If you don't have a vibrant Little League, what are the kids going to do? And so literally, if we're able to support the Little League for $1,625, that's a great program for the city to move forward with Little League. So I wanted to provide that data to show that one of the key things they said was that we never turn anyone away based on income. And so I think that fits in line with the council's core goals and objectives. And so that's why I brought the item before the council today.
In the report, there is the indication that money was spent on field maintenance or repairs? And you said you had a list of what those repairs were?
The majority of the repairs were for the field or for equipment to ensure the baseball field was properly aligned or able to play on. But I after looking at that, that's pretty standard information for the field. They had some vandalism issue too, but so after looking at the fee structure for the other agencies, that's why I kind of gravitated to look at do that comparison, because they are considerably lower than everyone else.
So it shouldn't be that we're reimbursing for the work that was done on the field or the vandalism that was fixed?
Well, the vandalism that was fixed was $100 or so, but the work in the field is well, put it this way: if the Little League didn't do the work, the council would do the work, and you can make that same equation that you are actually doing just that. But I just gravitated to the cost in terms of how much lower they were to the others.
And in here, you were suggesting that perhaps this went through the community benefits grant process. Would there be a way of us just saying, can we put this through that fund instead of having it go through a process that might take time?
Absolutely, we can certainly do that.
All right, those are my questions. My colleagues have questions, I'm sure. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I wanted to take it off the consent calendar because it's asking for an action by us. So I found that confusing. The other thing is, of course, you know, I'm crazy about Little League, and I'm crazy about all the sports, and if we're in my policy power, I would hope that there was all the money that we could just do it. I mean, I look at these prices, and I don't know how parents do it. So the question is, I guess, I would like it to go through the community benefits because I want it to be equitable, so if there's other teams and all that, we have a place for them to go that's consistent.
Sure. What we can do is we can bring this item, we can bring this item back. We'll have them fill out the application, just bring it back, and we'll place it on the consent calendar to come forward in January.
Okay.
Councilmember Mitchell?
I share the same sentiments of my colleagues that I am a little fearful that we may create an inequity with the fee, offsetting the fees of the players. I think it would be a better fit in our community benefit fund, so I support that.
Okay. So the motion is to have staff come back with a community benefit request?
Sure,
Okay.
absolutely.
And
Is there-
staff can take that as direction.
All right. So do we need to vote on that one, or is that, okay.
Mayor,
Councilmember Hussey.
my understanding was they're asking it for as soon as possible because I guess the city won't let them go ahead and schedule the fields for next year until the $1,625 is paid. Is that right?
That request has not been made to me, but I will certainly make sure that they move forward in that process.
Okay, so if they don't have it right now, we do the other venue, go that route, we'll be all right. They can go ahead and schedule?
I will make sure that they can schedule, this is not delay their.
Okay, thank you.
their season.
Okay, thank you. All right, we will move on to the next item, which I believe is public comment. Okay. Councilmember Mitchell, did you have a question?
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor.
So we're going to move on to public comment. This is the opportunity for members of the public to comment on any items not appearing on the regular agenda. Because of restrictions contained in California law, the City Council may not discuss or act on any item not on the agenda, but may briefly respond to statements made or ask a question for clarification. I may also request a brief response from staff to questions raised during public comment, or may request a matter be agendized for a future meeting. I have one request to speak from in front of me, and it is from Anthony Cortez.
Hello, Council. I'm Anthony Cortez, the Chamber President here in Grand Terrace. I want to discuss a few things. One, we would like to let everybody know the business of the month for December is AMR of Redlands. Want to talk about our decorating contest. If everybody doesn't know, we are doing our holiday decorating contest every year. You can pick up application at the chamber office here in Grand Terrace or online. It's for residents, business, and blocks, neighborhood blocks. It has to be a minimum of 3 homes. The day we're going to do it is Saturday, December 19th and Sunday, December 20th between 6 and 8 p.m. We'll have people going around and judging the houses. Chamber luncheon for December has been canceled. And, oops, excuse me 1 second. Our chamber, we got new chamber members. We want to welcome AMPAC Tri-State CDC here in Grand Terrace. Dr. Dan Ban, he is the new orthodontist in the old Darwin building. And that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cortez. I have no other request to speak forms in front of me. Is there anyone that would like to speak at this time? Okay, seeing no takers, I will close public comment and come back to council for their communications. We'll start with Councilmember Hussey.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Grand Terrace residents, for coming out tonight. And once again, Lieutenant, thank you for that statement. It was really enjoyed it. You did a good job on there, and you definitely nailed it on that, what our law enforcement does for our community. I just had one thing. Attended the Christmas tree lighting ceremony where the mayor got to light the tree. And I got to serve coffee, but I had to tilt the vat upside down or something so it wouldn't get hot coffee anywhere. So I think Jackie did that on purpose to me. And also Mr. Wilson, we were sitting there handing out cookies. So I found a way to make the city money because everybody wanted to give us money for the cookies, but we didn't accept any money. But one other thing, I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and God bless. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you. Merry Christmas as well. And I enjoyed the cookies and tree lighting, although I did have to slap the hands of the person next to me because she kept reaching over and getting the cookies out of my tray. The tree lighting was a terrific idea, and I think it was well placed timing-wise overall. There is a celebration tomorrow night. I think people have some knowledge about that in relation to the seniors, and I believe it's the city's Christmas party, is that correct?
Birthday party.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Christmas birthday party. Anyway, I've been asked to speak at that, and so come anyway. Anyway, and that's all I've got for today. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. Mine's a little bit lengthy, but I'll try to get through it as quickly as possible. I, too, would like to thank everyone for coming out tonight and attending. I love seeing the community active and involved. Lieutenant O'Brien, thank you for your quarterly presentation, but in addition to that, thank you for the extras at the very end. I think it's important that we continue to be active in our communities and abroad and go about our life so that we can get back into routine as much as possible. Chamber, thank you for your update tonight, and it's good news that you have new members coming aboard. That's great. It shows growth. Good work. On December 2nd, I attended the San Bernardino County-wide Gangs and Drug Task Force meeting. The topic was teen dating violence, presented by Clark Morrow with the San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, Public Affairs. Mr. Morrow shared information. 1 in 5 teens have reported some level of violence, both physical and emotional abuse. Abuse includes threats, badgering, intimidation, possibly leading to physical abuse within the lifetime of that relationship. Warning signs of teen violence may include poor grades, physical marks, fighting, binge drinking, suicide. Experts suggest talking to your teen early about teen violence and ensuring they are well informed to ask for help or are informed on ways to help others. Resources are available by Googling teen violence on the internet, and after this meeting I went home and had a conversation with my son, which may seem kind of odd that for some that you have a conversation with a male instead of a female about this, but boys too are victims of teen violence. So just wanted to share out what the meeting was about, and hopefully a little bit of that will speak to someone out there and help them. On December 3rd, I was thrilled to see such a great turnout at our first annual Light Up Grand Terrace Christmas tree lighting ceremony. My heart was so delighted with all of the praises and sentiments of gratitude from the residents. Many came up to us while we were handing out cookies, and before and after, actually, and just thanked us and said it was something that the community really desired and needed. So very nice to work in and I didn't participate in this as a council member. I participated as a resident. It was nice to work with a really good quality group of individuals to put on the event. Lots of people donated services. Sally, thank you for bringing the coffee out, and to the foundation for their donation that provided the cookies and other things for us to hand out to chills. Many that I'm not going to be able to remember, but I want to say a sincere thank you to all of those that were involved. Thank you to Councilman Hussey for holding the coffee container, and Councilman Wilson for your partnership in handing the cookies out. And it was a really nice event. And our mayor, what a fantastic tree lighting with your wand and a postcard picture at the very end. I think that made us all proud as a community. So good work to everyone involved. Also on December 4th, I attended the Azure Hills Church prayer vigil for the victims of the San Bernardino shooting. Paul Chabot, Cheryl Brown, Pro Tem Mayor Robles was also in attendance. It was a very nice event. It included prayer, tribute to the victims, special music. Just personally want to thank Azure Hills Church for providing this event in the time of healing for our community. My deepest condolences to the victims' families, and I just will keep you all in my prayers. And I too would like to end by wishing everybody a very happy and healthy holiday season. May you all be blessed and God keep you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yes, I also want to thank Azure Hills for having a place to contemplate in your sanctuary what has transpired in this community. It was a beautiful sanctuary. I was glad to be invited there. And it was just amazing to talk to Assemblywoman Cheryl Brown that had been up since 3:30 that morning, Congressman Pete Aguilar, 1:30 that morning, and you continue to see them in news accounts at every possible vigil there is. And she also mentioned that she was hoping to visit families and victims still in hospitals. They're quite remarkable people, and I really appreciated their kind efforts. Almatrans is getting pretty busy, but because one meeting was just today and one's Thursday, I'm going to save and have a consolidated report when we return. The other thing, I want to really encourage my two councilmen that haven't been to the new City Council Academy to please go, because it's really important. What I learned there was it's not important for me to ache out an abstention when I don't have a conflict of interest, to vote no. You know, they really convinced me that by voting no is really a failure of all of us. That means we really haven't debated or discussed or looked at opportunities to come to some kind of agreement to move forward. And I'm finding it kind of demoralizing for me that I'm moving in that direction, and probably the rest of us, still have that academy in our head. And it's important for us to all move in the same direction, I believe. And I know I hope, that the residents know out there, this isn't a boondoggle. This is something that's just tremendously important for how we serve our community. The other thing I want to ask is that we adjourn in memory of Connie Pasillas Ramirez. She was part of a huge number of sisters in San Bernardino that were pivotal in my upbringing. They were founders of Our Lady of Guadalupe Church. Their son, Anthony Ramirez, is a 38-year resident of Grand Terrace, and she spent her final days here in Brookdale. The Ramirez family, they were my husband's classmates, and one of them married into my brother. So we have a nephew and a niece that we now have a blood bond. And this woman was an incredible person. One of those people that really made, America what it was in the last century. And this is the the passing of the torch to people that need to really pick up and take that torch and re-energize, what the sense of community was in America. Thank you.
Thank you. 'Tis the season for lighting ceremonies. I attended on December 1st a tree lighting ceremony at the Arrowhead Regional Medical Center. The ceremony was coordinated by the Medical Center Foundation, and an invitation was extended by Colton Mayor Richard De La Rosa to take part in the event, so I was there. And the ceremony was also attended by Assemblymember Cheryl Brown. The president of the Medical Center Foundation has also extended the offer of facility tours to myself and my colleagues if any of you are interested. It really is a nice facility. I remember seeing it when it first opened, and I look forward to going back and seeing what they're doing with it again. It is our medical center for the region, and it's a very nice center. On the 2nd of December, I went to a Sandbag board meeting. We started with a closed session. We had conference with legal counsel on 3 separate items. Each were anticipated litigation. Our consent calendar items, these are items that were approved in addition to the items that I reviewed regarding the Metro Valley study session last council meeting. We received the September 2015 right-of-way grants of use report. We approved the preliminary design and environmental clearance for the Lilac to Rancho double-track projects, at least to put them out for a request for proposal. We approved on-call railroad right-of-way property management services request for proposals, and on-call railroad right-of-way maintenance of way request for proposal, which is really interesting. When we really talk about railroads, we look at management services, but we also look at maintenance of way. There's quite a bit that goes on to running the railroads in this region. Our discussion items were as followed. These are in addition to those that I discussed last time that were on the Metro Valley study session. We provided direction on key legislation, policy issues regarding a 1% cap on expenditure of the half-cent sales tax. That's their Measure I. And this is for the authority of staff salary and benefits, competitive bidding, proposal for setting board compensation, and legislation author. So in other words, Sandbag is wanting to go and look at some legislation to be written, and they were looking for some direction on some of these items and the opportunity to look for an author to help them with the legislation. We received the staff and independent taxpayer oversight committee review of the Measure I compliance, making sure that we are spending money as a Sandbag board the way that it's supposed to be spent. And they did find some compliance issues that have had to been brought to the attention of the Sandbag staff, and changes are being made based on the taxpayer oversight committee. We approved board member appointments to Sandbag committees and external agencies. We received and filed the information on opiate abuse and prevention. It was during this particular presentation that we learned about the active shooter in San Bernardino. So we did not hear all of that presentation. We received and filed a home energy renovation opportunity. That's the HERO program annual report. That's the program that allows property owners to fund energy efficiency, water conservation, and renewable energy projects through a special assessment on their property tax bill, and they can pay back the loan over up to 30 years. It depends on what their tax bill is and how much they're borrowing. Lastly, the last item that we got to before we adjourned early was a Council of Government Staffing and Funding. That was the idea that this particular board wants to get more into a discussion of being a council of governments and going after certain projects, such as forming of a regional nonprofit to apply for funding opportunities, increasing regional collaboration in economic development, coordinating regional efforts to assist in the success of Ontario International Airport, and probably about 6 to 7 other items that they've been looking at. This would involve hiring of 2 additional employees to pursue Council of Government projects. And as they had this discussion, they talked about an additional fee, and the additional fee that was suggested would be about $5,336.72. assessed for each agency on top of the current $105,000 that each of us pays to belong to this Council of Governments. And this would begin in FY 16-17. I clarified that what they were asking us to do was to obligate our agencies to this additional cost, and they said that is what we were being asked to do, and I and a number of other people voted no. I'm going to ask for more clarification on this item because as we were discussing it, there were members that were leaving, there were members that were going to focus on the events that were unfolding at the time. And we actually adjourned right after the vote on this one. To me, it was pushed to a vote. There wasn't that much discussion. And so I know that there were a number of people that, at least the person next to me said that they hadn't realized that that's exactly what we were doing, was obligating our agencies to spending more money. So I will be in another discussion with Ray Wolf on Thursday, and I will ask about an opportunity to maybe revisit this one again when we have a little bit more clarity of discussion. The next item was the Oversight Board for the successor agency of the Grand Terrace Community Redevelopment Agency. We had a quorum present this time. We appointed our new member, and the Oversight Board has approved the professional services agreement with RSG Group for the Long Range Property Management Plan Services. And bringing us again to December 3rd, to our own tree lighting ceremony. And this occasion gave the opportunity, I think, to bring our community together in the spirit of the season. And I've heard from very many people how happy they were, not only that we had the tree lighting, but I continue to hear how happy people are that we have brought back the decorations for this time of year. And I, in fact, as earlier as before I came to this meeting, I saw pictures posted on Facebook of the items that are in the intersection at Barton Road and Mount Vernon, and people seem to like those. So thank you to city staff for doing those. Thank you for city staff and our community event chairs, Yvette and Frankie. Their committee did a fantastic job. Other contributors, of course, include Azure Hills, Seventh-day Adventist Church allowing us to use their parking lot, Grand Terrace High School Band, Grand Terrace Boy and Girl Scout Troop, Rec Center students, the Foundation of Grand Terrace, the fire department bringing Santa. I know Chills was there. I'm sure there are others that I have forgotten. And a special thank you for the wand that I was given to light our tree with. That was really something special. As far as not canceling the ceremony plan for the day after we had our fatal event on December 2nd, I believed it was the right thing to do. And with the turnout that we have, I think our community members were looking for a way to come together and to fight against the feelings that they were having. And last night I attended a Hanukkah ceremony in Riverside, and I think that the rabbi there said it best when he talked about this is an opportunity for the light to win out over the darkness, and for us to have these events to show that we are not going to give into the darkness. And that's the way that I felt about that event and the one in Riverside last night. So I will wish Happy Hanukkah to those friends of mine who celebrate that this week, and Merry Christmas and season's greetings. That will end my report, and we will move on to the rest of our agenda. Our next item is public hearings, so we have 2 of those tonight. To speak on public hearing items, please fill out a request to speak form and give it to the city clerk. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to address the city council. If you challenge in court any action taken concerning a public hearing item, you may be limited to raising only those issues you or someone else raised at the public hearing, described in this notice or in written correspondence delivered to the city at or prior to the public hearing. And to this time, I have received no correspondence for our first item, but we'll start with our truck route ordinance. If we could please have a staff report.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. I am Adrienne Freeman, Management Analyst with the Community Development Department. And at this time, we have our truck route ordinance. This staff report supports the 2030 Vision Goal number 2, to maintain public safety by investing in critical improvements to infrastructure. The establishment of a city truck route is warranted to restrict noise and traffic pollution and address safety concerns in residential areas. The designated truck route shall establish that all residential streets within Grand Terrace are prohibited for use as an official truck route by trucks that are 10,000 pounds or 5 tons or more. There are some exceptions, and I would like to note that Council has advised that 2 of these exceptions need to be added to the language of the ordinance, so that correction will be made. So right now, the exceptions listed are pickups and deliveries of goods and public utility vehicles. The vehicles that need to be added are emergency services vehicles and school buses. Appropriate signage will be erected indicating the streets that have been designated by ordinance as an official truck route. Just as an example, this would be an example of a 5-ton box truck, just to give you a visual. The following streets and portions of streets are designated and established as commercial vehicle truck routes. So we have Barton Road within the city limits here at the top. Mount Vernon Avenue from Barton to Main Street, so this section here. We have Main Street from the westerly city limit here to Mount Vernon Avenue. And then the portion of La Cadena that is within the city of Grand Terrace city limit. Now, as you can see with Main Street, the south part of Main Street is, of course, in the county of Riverside, and much of La Cadena is actually in the city of Colton. So city staff contacted both Colton and the county of Riverside to let them know of our proposal, and they did indicate that those routes are indeed their truck routes as well. So there's no conflict there. Public notice was provided in accordance with state law. This particular notice was given 60 days prior to today's hearing and for 4 consecutive weeks, beginning September 30th, 2015. At this time, staff is recommending that City Council conduct a public hearing and introduce by title only and waive further reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 10.04 of Title 10 of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code establishing a city truck route. Staff is happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Does council have any questions of staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will open the public hearing. I have no request to speak formed in front of me, but one is coming. Thank you. Okay, one request to speak form, Patricia Farley. Please come forward.
Good evening. I don't think this is on. Okay. Good evening. I am concerned about how the city plans on enforcing this, both for people who claim that they have business on a residential street when maybe they don't, and secondly, the weights of these vehicles. And I'd like to point out that, well, I'm not sure how it works, but it seems that we're encouraging a lot of very large trucks to be coming down, through residential on Main Street and Mount Vernon that have no business in Grand Terrace and that aren't contributing to the cost of the roads and the damage and the pollution. And I was wondering how that's being addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that's the only item that I have, only speaker slip I have in front of me. Is there anybody else that would like to speak during this public comment? Okay, seeing no takers, I will close public comment and ask staff if you would like to address the concerns that were raised.
Well, in terms of how we're going to make sure this is followed, we have signage requirements by law. So we will have signs along the truck route. We also will have signs in various major intersections to determine or announce to various truck drivers the various streets that are not truck routes. So we're going to have signs both announcing where the truck routes are, and we will have some signs that will be serve as a deterrent to show where the truck routes are not. Hopefully that makes sense. So we're planning to put up at least 20 signs throughout the city at major intersections.
I understand 20 signs, and that's good that people will know that they can and can't be in certain areas. How will this be enforced?
Madam Mayor, if I may, the enforcement of the ordinance would be just like any other ordinance that we have. It can be enforced either through our code enforcement or through our sheriff's deputies. The tonnage of the vehicles that is being regulated through this ordinance is identified in the California Vehicle Code. So our deputies have that information, and they can enforce as they see violations based upon their ability at that time. Right now, keep in mind, we have no ordinance to regulate the routes of these larger vehicles. The reality is that these vehicles are coming through our city limits now. We do have a lot of regional traffic that comes through. So in the absence of no ordinance, this is a good thing. Again, enforcement would be through our deputies. But keep in mind, it's just like any other ordinance. We're not going to necessarily have a comprehensive enforce just this ordinance. We have multiple ordinances on our books, but just generally that's how it would be enforced.
Okay, so the tonnage you said is addressed in the California Vehicle Code. If we had changed the tonnage and it didn't match that, would that mean that it would be unenforceable?
You would be able to, if you wanted to increase the threshold, you could increase the threshold. You could go up to 6 tons if that's preferred by council.
And how do we ensure that those that are traveling on not in truck routes are actually doing business on those streets?
Again, as you know, Grand Terrace does have a lot of regional traffic, and so we will get traffic from uses outside of the city. For instance, in Colton, we have Colton has a large trucking facility. Those trucks are most likely not only using La Cadena, which is mostly in Colton, but they are using Martin Road, and they may be using Mount Vernon. And there are vehicles that use our city as a cut-through. We can't assure that those vehicles are only coming to Grand Terrace for business. There's going to be some pass-through traffic, but again, in the absence of no ordinance, I think that this is better than not having anything in place as we currently do.
Mayor, may I also add to that?
Yeah, and you can answer this question too as you add to that. Are we considering sending notices to these local companies, such as the trucking company in Colton, to let them know that we're changing our ordinance?
We certainly can do that, and there's also trucking companies in High Grove that also use this pass-through. I just wanted to note that for purposes of trying to determine whether trucks are using this for a route or not, we also have the ability to do some traffic stops or traffic patrols on certain streets. In addition to that, item number 8 that's on the agenda tonight lists about 4 cameras in the areas that we're talking about where the truck route is. And so that's also some additional footage that you would have available to determine whether people are using it as a route versus having it as a business.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I would like to add that we did send notices to the major truck hubs in Colton that are off of Barton, and we can add High Grove as well. We can send the notices to High Grove. And on some of those signs that designate the intersections that lead to roads that are not truck routes, that will also list the weight limit. So that's another way of enforcement, or at least notification for truck drivers.
Okay, thank you. Do any of my colleagues have questions? Okay. Well, at this time, I'd entertain a motion on this item.
Madam Mayor, may I please, as indicated by Adrian Freeman, we are recommending a change to the ordinance, and that's on page 63, paragraph C, when it speaks to the provisions of this section shall not apply to. We, in the motion, if it would be also included that this section would be revised to add a provision for emergency vehicles and also school buses. And in that way, we would not have to have a reintroduction public hearing item.
Thank you.
May I just ask one point of clarification? Is when you say school buses, are you being specific just for school buses? Does that also include like RTA?
We have passenger buses
Okay.
under jurisdiction of Public Utilities Commission, Metropolitan Transit Authority. That's already part of the provision.
When it says introduce ordinance, okay, so I'm trying to think how you structure moving this item.
Councilmember Robles, you could make a motion to introduce the ordinance as amended per staff's recommendations.
I move adoption of the ordinance as amended.
I will second.
Okay. I have a motion and second. Do we need to read the title before we vote? I'll read it. Ordinance of City Council of the City of Grand Terrace, County of San Bernardino, State of California, amending Chapter 10.04 of the State of California, of Title 10 of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code by relocating and renumbering Article X, violations in its entirety as Article XI, and replacing Article X in its entirety with a new Article X entitled Designated Truck Route, and this does include the changes as noted by staff. So we have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to our second public hearing for tonight, and that is item 8, which is an art in public places ordinance. May we have staff report, please?
Item 7.
Item 7. Item 7, art in public places. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. Again, Adrian Freeman, Management Analyst. Public art is a critical element of providing a diverse and culturally rich environment to residents and visitors to the city of Grand Terrace. Public art provides for the following. It increases quality of life, it improves the aesthetic appeal of the city, and in line with our Healthy GT initiative, it promotes healthy living by drawing residents, visitors, and workers to the outdoor space. As required by the city zoning code, staff presented the Art in Public Places ordinance to the Planning Commission. At the second meeting, the commissioners passed a resolution with reservations recommending that council take up discussion of the proposed ordinance. Please note, the Planning Commission chairman, who was unable to attend that meeting, provided a letter explaining his disapproval of the ordinance, and a copy of that letter has been provided to the council by the city clerk tonight. The Planning Commission raised 4 main concerns that they would like the council to consider. The potential impact of the fee on development was one concern. Secondly, there was a suggestion or request for consideration that we lower the fee and apply it across the board to all development. On this item specifically, one of the commissioners urged staff and council to consider the example of art in public places in the city of Indio, where the fee is applied to both residential and commercial development. The third concern that was raised is to consider a threshold for the fee, that no development under that threshold would be charged the public art fee. And the fourth concern raised was to place a cap on fee so that development over a certain threshold will pay a flat rate instead of a percentage. The ordinance submitted to council tonight has been revised to incorporate the cap suggestion that was given by the Planning Commission. The contribution amount varies depending on whether the developer chooses to incorporate public art or pay an in lieu of fee to the Public Arts Fund. So the ordinance now reads as all new non-residential development projects shall include public art equal to at least 1% of the estimated total construction costs, but no more than $25,000 per 0 to 25 acres. So that's a cap that was placed. The developer has the option to pay an in lieu of fee, which shall be 1/2 of 1% of the estimated total construction cost. The in lieu of fee percentage has no cap. Thirdly, the ordinance will create a public art fund as a separate fund to receive monies for public art. The table shown above lists 3 of the last major commercial developments in the city. We have AutoZone, Edison Substation, the Edison Substation, and McDonald's. The total construction costs are listed. If we were to apply the 1% public art fee, you would see there $4,000, roughly $5,000 for AutoZone, roughly $10,000 for the Edison Substation, a little over $4,000 for McDonald's would be paid. If there was a choice instead to pay the in lieu of fee, it would be the 0.5% of that amount. So AutoZone would pay about $2,200, a little over $2,200. Edison Substation, nearly $5,000, and McDonald's a little over $2,000 for the Art in Public Places program. This slide shows some examples of public art that exists within the city. The top 2, we see the Senior Center that provides some aesthetic appeal for the seniors in our community and those that go to visit the site. There in the bottom right, we have the unicycle that's actually in front of our city hall, and then advertisement for Blue Mountain brand. This is an example, or some examples of public art that can be found in some other cities, just to give the council an idea of what can be implemented. You have monuments, you have murals, you have larger-than-life structures. And the bottom picture is just an example of a commercial business and how they can implement art in public places requirements. So you see Safeway that has implemented a monument or structure of a horse in front of their business. Also to mention, within the Inland Empire, this is not an uncommon practice to have art in public places programs. Other cities within the Inland Empire that also have art in public places include Redlands, Riverside, Fontana, and Yucaipa. Some other cities throughout Southern California that also have art in public places include Cathedral City, Brea, West Covina, Claremont, La Quinta, Palm Desert, Whittier, and Indio, as we mentioned before. All of these cities have used this program to improve the quality of life for their residents and their visitors. Public notice of tonight's public hearing was provided in accordance with state law. At this time, staff is recommending that the council conduct a public hearing and introduce by title only and waive further reading of an ordinance to amend Title 18 of the Grand Terrace Municipal Code by adding Chapter 18.74, Art in Public Places. Staff is more than willing to answer questions that you may have at this time.
Thank you. Does council have any questions of staff at this time? Okay, if not, I'll go ahead and open public hearing. We'll start with our first speaker slip that I have is Jeffrey McConnell.
Jeffrey McConnell, Walnut Avenue. I was at the Planning Commission meetings for this item. First, I'd like to say I hope you all got a copy of Tom Comstock, chairperson's letter. It was quite lengthy and very poignant. I spoke with him this evening. He couldn't make it. He wanted to make sure that everyone would know that he was dead set against it. Tom, for those of you who don't know, is also a contractor, and he explicitly pointed out how detrimental any fees can be towards development, and this is one more thing that he sees as just making or breaking projects. Two, this is Grand Terraces. A lot of artwork is put in for cities, as you named, all of which are much larger than Grand Terrace. We don't have really the tax base that they have, but we're not really a destination place. What we are is a bedroom community, and that's what people like. The other thing is, you saw the pictures, some of the examples they saw up there. I can go through other lists too, including the new Grand Terrace Park has art. Recently, the Caltrans project, the roundabout. I sat here in this meeting and listened to you discuss the art that was going to go in the roundabout. There's a great big old $100,000 project sitting down in Pico Park that we just unveiled last month. It can be considered art. All these things were done without raising money and attacking potential development coming to Grand Terrace, which contradicts to me the financial point of the 2030 vision. You want to attract people to development into Grand Terrace? Stop putting financial roadblocks. Even if it stops one project, that adversely affects us. All these projects that are all this artwork that I just discussed, and most of them, is always done within the context of the project. It was required by staff, or they require some more trees, or some other aesthetic pleasing attributes to the building or to the property. As you see, we already have a lot of artwork without an art fund. I don't think we need this. This is definitely not the time for sure. Some of the planning commissioners all agreed with me this is not the time. The staff did lower the fee. That's nice, but this is just not the time. So, oh yes, in Tom's letter he discussed, and I've heard this many times since you know I come to most of these meetings, about the maintenance issue, especially after the fall of Measure C. We're always short-handed. Who's going to fix or repair it? Who's going to clean it up? That was even discussed with the roundabout artwork. Who's going to clean it up? We're short-handed. I'm always hearing that we're short-handed with the maintenance. So this is just another, who's going to maintain all these artwork projects if you put them in a public place?
Thank you, Mr. McConnell.
I think I got them all. Thank you.
Next speaker is Jeff Allen.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I just wanted to speak as a citizen this time about this because I absolutely support it, and I'm the one who did the check around, and that was mentioned in the staff report about supporting. I don't really support the way Indio does it. It's just that I checked some various cities in my doing the planning commission work, and that was one. We were trying to elicit a discussion of alternatives to a 1% strictly on commercial development, because the Planning Commission chairman had as you've heard, has severe reservations about that. And this was a suggestion I made, that perhaps if we lower the fee and put it across the board to residential and non-residential development over $100,000, and not assessed on the land, only on the building, the way Indio does it, it seems sort of fair, and then the residents have bought into the art themselves. You know, the people who are actually here to appreciate it. You know, I moved here in 1999, and when I was looking for a house, the realtor showed me houses all over Colton, Loma Linda, but when she came up here, she said, you know, up here is where they really mean it when they say location, location, location in Grand Terrace. You pay for that. And so we paid extra for that because we saw beautiful houses down below in Colton and wonderful houses in, you know, San Bernardino, but we wanted to be in Grand Terrace because Grand Terrace had a reputation, and we were willing to pay a little extra for that, for what Grand Terrace had to offer. And I'd like to see it return to what it was 10 years ago. And that's why I think if we could get the 1%, I think that's great. I don't have the reservations. I don't share the same reservations that the planning commissioner president had. I think that if folks want to do business and be and live in Grand Terrace, then they would be willing to, pay that cost. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. The last speaker slip I have is for Edward Giroux.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, City Council. I'm Ed Giroux. I live over on Vivian Dunn, Becky's husband. So I don't have anything against having art in this city. I think art is a great way. We have very talented people that live in this town who could offer a lot to do with the art that we could add to enhance our town. One of my questions is the time. Is this really the right time for it? As staff mentioned to you, some of the cities that have this art is the city of Riverside and the city of Fontana. And neither one of those communities do not charge this fee, this development fee. They ask the folks if they would like to participate and bring in art to our community. And I don't see why we as a city can't go in that direction, at least experiment with it to see how many negatives we get or how many positives we get to see if this is a positive direction for us to go and to charge such a fee for this. And like I said, there's nothing like art to tell you that I'm home, because I'm an immigrant to this country. And when I moved here at 13 into a small town in Northern California, they had this mailbox that was painted red, white, and blue. Pretty important when you look at this country to recognize red, white, and blue. And every time we passed that mailbox, because we had a commute between the city of Portola and Oroville a lot because my dad was at the railroad, I knew I was home when we passed that mailbox. And I would love to see something here to tell me that I'm home again. But right now, I don't know if this is the exact opportunity to start charging, because I do not believe we can bring large business. It would be small business. And as one party said at a commission meeting, if they were charged that fee, they would change their mind about staying here in this town. So I just don't know right now if this is the proper thing. I'd like to see us go into an experimental asking developers who want to come here, see if they would participate, and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Giroux. That's the last speaker slip I had. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this item at this time? Okay, seeing no takers, I will close the public comment and redirect to staff to maybe address the issue of maintenance and what staff was thinking as far as how public art would be maintained once it's installed.
Yes, Madam Mayor. So public art installed in our public right-of-ways and our parkways would be maintained by city staff. And, this is a program that's just being implemented. I don't see that we're going to have a lot of art to install initially to be significantly concerned with whether our maintenance staff can absorb the additional maintenance. But I believe that with the staff that we do have, once we start implementing the program, that we won't have an issue with maintenance.
In addition to that, Mayor, because of the art being placed in the public right-of-way and the council, and the actual art going to the Planning Commission and the council, one of the things that both parties should consider is the type of art and its durability. If you're going to put, let's say, a paper mache something isn't reasonable in the public right-of-way because of, weather and so on and so on. So as part of the approval process, you would want to consider, is this going to be something that is going to last a test of time, or something that's going to be an eyesore through, because it's going to deteriorate, and we haven't planned for that. So when a project comes forward, when the Planning Commission and the council ultimately is approving it, they would then, look at that and ask that question you're asking now. What's going to be the maintenance? Staff needs to weigh in on that too. Is that, if it's a bronze statue, it's going to be much better than maybe a porcelain, something that's right near the road. So you have to make sure that we have the right combination.
Right. What do my colleagues think on this item?
Well, when I first saw this item, because it was nothing, I don't remember any of us expressing as a burning issue. So, and I kind of saw it kind of fancy. I guess I see that we're seeing on the horizon a potential for development, and we probably want an ordinance in place. But I also share a couple of concerns, and that too being the timing. Also, I kind of have, I guess, a little bit of concern. It seems very central government to me. It seems that if someone wants to develop here in good faith, they would have, and it was something that was financially beneficial to them, that they would voluntarily, put some art in. But I'm waiting to hear what my peers say. But what I would be interested in is, of course, collaboratively coming to a decision on this. But like the sign ordinance, perhaps the Planning Commission can spend more time looking at this and come up something that they really feel comfortable with, and debate it, and then and bring it back to us in a more sculptured fashion that would be palatable for all of us.
Thank you. Councilmember Hussey?
Yeah, I love art. I love looking at it when you go, like today I went to Canyon Crest. I had to go meet my son, and they had some fountains and stuff there, but right now, as Mr. Mayor Pro Tem said, I don't think we should put additional fee on developers for this. We're trying to get development in here, and just that 1% might drive them away. I mean, that's my opinion. I mean, if they volunteer to do it, part of their design, and want to add a fountain, if they're doing the shopping center, if they're making a housing complex or something, by all means, but I don't think we should have a fee saying, oh, by the way, you got to get 1% for art that the city's implementing. I mean, speaking of art, we had at Center Divide over there by Chevron and Walmart, those two little mountain things were hit 6 months ago. I haven't seen those replaced, so we're talking about upkeep and maintenance, and I haven't seen those two little slabs of stone replaced, and I guess that was from an accident, and I don't know if they're going through insurance, but I think this is just another thing that's a burden for the developers that they have to pay. I'm sure we're tacking a lot on these developers, and they're usually they're pretty generous with things, but I don't think we should force them to it. That's just my opinion.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to weigh in on this subject in relation to things. I get concerned about the concept of government legislating art. I think it controverts the intention of art, but it also comes under the heading of what constitutes art and who decides what it's going to be. The way I understand this ordinance, it says that the Planning Commission will do it, make a recommendation to the City Council, and then we'll all decide what art is. I know that it's kind of an odd comment on this ordinance, considering the fact that I don't support it. I think it would be important that if it was to be administrated, the fee should be paid to permit, not occupancy. It's too hard for our staff to track somebody down and get money recovered at occupancy. It begs, kind of a mistake in process. So I would suggest that language gets changed. But that being said, I know a little bit about Indio, and I know a little bit about Palm Desert. And I know there's quite a bit of discussion about the amount of art that's over in Palm Desert. I've driven those streets a lot. Most of that art that got put in there came from the RDA and the overage that Palm Desert, there was an overabundance amount of money that they used for those types of projects. As a matter of fact, they even bought houses up on the hills because the city fathers didn't like the fact that somebody would build on the hills. That's a misuse of RDA funds that just is incredible. So I don't know that I'd be too fast to say that, Palm Desert's a good idea, good comparison. I also know Indio, and it's nice to say that they have a residential program plus a commercial program. First of all, I would never be in favor of a residential program. I don't think it amortizes well, unless you were talking about something major. We don't have the room for that to begin with. But the commercial aspect of it and the residential in Indio, I don't know if you've been over to Indio for a while, but I was there building stuff for about 3 years straight. And there's not a lot of stuff going on over there other than them trying to promote their city center, and the city center has not really been moving the way they thought it might do. They've had lots of turnover in their city manager situation, their city council, in their their upper management in the city. It's just chronic. It's been like that forever. So probably not a good comparison there either. I think it comes under the heading of marketing for an area, but I also think private donors are the ones that usually they sponsor these art situations, and that's where you really start to get museum situations that develop. I just don't think that Grand Terrace is helping itself by mandating a art fee on top of the fees that we have. And you know I'm sensitive about fees anyway. Thanks.
Thank you. Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually like the idea of displaying unique artwork through our community. I think it would be a nice complement to our community, and I think that it would create that extra special sense that we all like about Grand Terrace, and why we paid a little extra for our homes. And it is the community that we are proud to live in. But I am concerned about the timing of the fees. I think maybe we create something where we can offer it to developers to maybe contribute to a fund where we set a special fund so that we can when we get enough money and we find a piece that we want to display in our community that represents our community well, that we can purchase it, and maybe we also offer that same opportunity to individuals to contribute to that fund, and maybe have some things maybe that memorialize someone, or a sentiment, or a special meaning to them. So maybe instead of this looking as it does today, maybe it can morph into something that can still serve our community well, but not at the cost of future development. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Mayor, may I add to the comment from the staff's perspective? I think, as Councilmember Wilson indicated, that a lot of artwork that we see today is based upon redevelopment. Redevelopment is, so the projects that you see at the Senior Center, all of that art was a part of a redevelopment project with bonds. And so in the parks that we have, those projects were done with public money. But one of the things that's important is that there's two things that I wanted to actually outline with the council. One is that there is a perception that this 1% fee is going to have an impact on development. It is not the 1% fee that would have an impact on development, whether you choose to locate in Grand Terrace or not. When you compare the utility taxes in other organizations, the 4 and the 5 and the 7 and the 8% utility taxes, a real significant view would be to look at what our building costs are compared to other building costs, and you'll see that this 1% or 0.5% is not going to be the deciding factor of whether an organization decides to locate in Grand Terrace. The other thing really is about transparency. So one of the things that we're going to be doing, if this doesn't move forward, and that's absolutely fine, is that, so we're going to be engaging with new developers saying, we would like you to contribute to, this is our core, this is our standard. And some may say, yes, that's great. Transparency is, this is our standard. We have this up front. It's, you can either contribute as a part of your project and make it as you'd like, or if you don't want to contribute, you can contribute to this particular fund. And this is art in public places. City governments and city managers are always trying to find a way to move and replace old existing funding to new existing funding. So one of the things that I wanted to do to bring this forward was to actually have the conversation. And it may be a premature conversation, but it's one that we can have now, and we can look forward to its the discussion's there, and as the council members have said through their comments, if this isn't the right time, the conversation has happened, and I think it's well known, as I noticed immediately when I came to Grand Terrace, that there is a look and a feel, and artwork is all over, in the parks, in various locations, some by the public, some by the private, as recently noted with the Wall of Freedom. So the discussion, me telling staff to move forward with this, is something that I would do to have the council have that discussion, and to be as transparent as possible to say, this is what's happening. I think we tried to get the comments from the Planning Commission, and we tried to incorporate, and we made some adjustments based upon those comments from the Planning Commission. But this is what we arrived from all the comments would be the best product to put forward to the council for your consideration.
Thank you. I'm going to interject a comment or two before I ask for further from my colleagues. And that is one, I'm a little disappointed that you didn't have the red-tailed hawk in your pictures. And something interesting about that red-tailed hawk is that that was not purchased by the city. It was funded through the Foundation of Grand Terrace, through donations from community members. I'm not sure about the history of the bicycle that's in front, and I do know that some of the art in the Susan Pettit Park was redevelopment related. But when I think of art in our city, and I think of the things that the community would like to have, I think there's a way that we should encourage public art, and we do have a lot of artists. But I would like us to find a way to bring out those local artists and to find donations from private sources that would like to see that art in public. And then we as a council and as a city government work in partnership to help make that happen. When I think about the percentages that we have in here for new development, I'm just wondering if that's even going to bring that much money into a fund. You know, if their idea was that, well, all right, we don't want to put the art in our development, we'll just go ahead and give to this fund. I'm wondering if there's going to be enough to do much public art with at that point. I would like to have a way maybe to encourage when we have a larger development that they put in aesthetically pleasing items in their development, and I think that can happen through the Planning Commission process. It's been a while since we've done a development, so I don't know if that's something that's really put in place when we go through this, but as we talked about, Councilmember Hussey talked about the Canyon Crest Town Center. They did a revitalization of that, and I believe it was the owner of that complex that put in all those niceties. And so to me, there's something about a developer developing their center in such a way that they want to draw and attract people to come there and shop, and that gives them more of an opportunity to consider the atmosphere they want to create. And I think through the Planning Commission process, that would be a way to encourage that. But for us to demand that they put in public art, I guess we get into the point of who's going to decide what's the right thing and what's the wrong thing. And so, Mayor Pro Tem, did you have more comments?
I kind of feel that if this is something that the council would want the Planning Commission to really hammer out to a policy or an element in when they're approving projects, I think that's something we really should, not table. But one of the things that I observed when I was pretty largely an anti-RDA abuse person. I mean, for example, we have art, but we don't have a community center. We have some things, but we don't have an expanded library. You know, we have a beautiful community, but we have poles everywhere that detract from the beauty, the natural beauty of this thing. So I guess, and then I'm looking at the state saying, well, we want to do this tax, and we want to extend this temporary tax, and we want to do this, and we want to do that. And then the formulas come out per capita. So you have 14,000 people, so you're going to get $1 out of this thing, so they're going to do $1 billion in the state and we're going to get 14,000. So, it's kind of hard to legislate with the Brown Act, but when you can talk to one person about one thing, and one of the things is the ideal world for me would be that we could legislate at the local level and say, we need a community center, we need expanded library, we need underground utilities, we need some public art, and we would say, well, we're going to do a bond for 5 years and it's going to cost us X amount of money, or a bond for 30. But then it's, and the thing that I appreciate about Grand Terrace is the incrementalism, a 1% here or 5% here, and I don't know, looking at this, I don't know what our fees are in comparison to other, but I know working, in the Great Recession of the 90s with the county and developers coming to us and saying, it's impossible to do business here. So we looked at that. The other thing was I had a criticism, and it was the Eli Broad Corporation. And I put on Twitter, I says, listen, you're taking X millions of dollars in RDA funds, which means you take the RDA money that's not there for the citizens. Then you turn around and you say, I'm going to build you a museum, and you're using RDA money. So it's like for every $5 in public money he gave $1 in philanthropy. So that's just kind of, so we can have a new paradigm, I guess I was saying, post-RDA paradigm, and also the one that doesn't have government prescribing so much of the fine details. It seems like if public art was an amenity that helped them financially, they would do it. It is something we can encourage in our planning element or in our planning process, let's do it. But, it's a worthwhile discussion to have. It's something that I think we should let the Planning Commission really dig into. And because obviously they don't have agreement, they have a lot of compelling arguments and good ideas, and I think we should let them continue to explore that on our behalf.
Any other comments? All right. Councilmember Wilson.
As I was listening to the various comments, one thing did strike me, though. Perhaps we're talking about something that could be developed regionally. If we're looking at it from the perspective of regional type of addition, rather than just site-specific Grand Terrace, this is something that maybe we could explore a little bit more on a regional basis. We're looking for these kinds of things. Why not see if we can figure that out?
Yeah, like the arts connection. And our city clerk went to something there, and we do have our arts folks. There's a lot of people that could put their, get involved in this. And then to be cynical, there's politicians have this cool, unethical thing they can do legally. Like the governor goes and they call behested contributions. So say, you can ask Governor Brown and tell him we need art in Grand Terrace, and he'll ask, like Chevron Oil or whatever, on his behalf and his name to give us public art. Maybe we can look at that. And of course, I'm just being sarcastic.
All right, what would we like to do with this?
I'd like to refer it back to the Planning Commission for further study.
Okay. So motion to refer this back to the Planning Commission in a second? All right. All right, please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye.
City Manager Duffy, do you have enough direction on this?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to item 8. When I would call bingo at the Lions Club, whenever there was a mistake, we put $1 in the sock. Maybe we need to start that. Maybe we could put that towards our art fund. All right, so item 8 is an update and direction on implementation of video cameras in the public right-of-way and the city parks. May we have a staff report, please?
Mayor, I fear that that fund would not generate any money because the mistakes over the last 6 months have been so few and far between.
That's very kind of you to say.
Absolutely. Pat, do we have the... Mayor and City Council members, on August 27, 2015, the Council approved a quality of life enhancement budget appropriations. And some of the projects were to start immediately, like the more police officers, while others requested that Council requested that staff come back to the Council for direction. So tonight is one of those projects. It's the countywide camera project. And so the scope of this project included the council appropriated $50,000 on October 27, 2015. The direction to work with the Sheriff's Department on the workability of the cameras. Initiate a pilot program on Barton Road in Mount Vernon. City staff and sheriff access to camera via smartphones and tablets and the computers. That was one of our goals in terms of trying to have immediate access to camera footage. And then return to the council for further direction. So staff worked with Contact Security Lines US Inc. Now, I met them several years ago at a League of California Cities meeting, and recently met them again at the meeting that we attended in San Jose. This is what they call their i4 pod. It has 4 cameras on it. These cameras are, they can be moved, they can be zoomed in, focused, and it's the one that sits on the corner of Mount Vernon and Barton Road currently. So you can access this data via a tablet or a smartphone, or even on the computer. As you see in this particular view, you'll see on the first one, on the right-hand side, you'll see is 4 pictures. That's each camera lens on my iPhone there. And then one, if you want to go section by lens, you can look at it at that point of view. So this is a larger point of view of all 4 cameras. This is actually taken on the 31st of October. You'll see it's a pretty clear picture, and it gives you a really good view of all four sections of that particular corner. The cameras, though, are easily adjustable in terms of this is one lens, and you have one camera 3. It's been adjusted by me basically using my iPhone to zoom in and zoom out. I'm showing that you can also zoom in on a license plate. And so you can actually set defaults on this. So if you wanted to look at license plates only, you could set defaults for just that particular location. And it's real time. So whoever has administrative access can get in and set the default. If I were to say, for example, if the sheriff set the default and I got in and I moved this around, it would then revert after 5 minutes, go back to the normal default. And here's another thing too, is that you can also, in that corner, I'm capturing Little Caesar's Pizza, I'm capturing also a license plate there in the bottom, I'm also capturing someone going into Walgreens. So you can actually move these lenses around just by your iPad, your smartphone, anywhere. I'm looking at this whether I'm at the airport or I'm in Sacramento or anywhere you're able to access. I also provided the council with, I think some of the council members actually loaded it onto their smartphones to review some of the information. Here's this taken this morning. You'll see that there's on the first box on the left-hand side, there's chills and there's a lady going through the garbage and feeding her dogs. Here's an intersection where the car is just coming in early this morning. And there's actually, if you think about where the camera is, it's capturing captured all the way down to where Birch Jeweler is. And that's the view that they have on the camera that can be adjusted. So the goal would be to establish a shield around Grand Terrace. There are approximately 5 to 7 different ways to enter into Grand Terrace, and the goal would be to develop a shield that would mean that any vehicle coming into Grand Terrace would be captured by the camera on the camera system going in and going out. The locations would be on the corner of Barton and Michigan, Mount Vernon and Barton Road, Barton below Vista Grand Way, which is near where we have the City Grand Terrace entrance sign. Mount Vernon and Grand Terrace Road, where the Grand Terrace Road and Canal Street intersect on the back, as you come up on the back side. Michigan and Main, Newport and Grand Terrace Road, Main and Oriole, and Main and Mount Vernon. So cameras in all of those locations would ensure that any vehicle coming in from outside, whether it's High Grove or Colton or the 215 freeway, would be captured by the camera system. The cameras can record up to 14 days, but can be modified with a longer drive for 90 days to be recorded. So the estimated cost for the city approximated $50,000, and we estimate that would be about $50,000 to create the shield around the city. That's 8 cameras. In addition to, we could actually incorporate the cameras that we have in the parks for, and I put down $4,000, and that's a high number, but that also includes the ability to have a station here in City Hall where you'd be able to monitor the cameras in the parks, to be able to have your staff passively monitor the cameras in the parks. The Security Lines US proposes to develop a mesh network system in the city. That would be basically putting a signal on one of the water towers on the Blue Mountain and using our own network to bounce the signal off so you wouldn't have to pay any cell phone usage charges. The other option that we have is to use the LPR cameras. And the LPR cameras can be purchased for, at this point in time, about $15,000 per lane. And the great thing about the LPR cameras is that it requires very little human oversight. It's all hooked into the county's system, which then goes to the state and national database. And it's great if the bad guys is driving a stolen car information, or a victim sees a license plate or a partial license plate. If that is hit, it's allowed the Sheriff's Department to do a search for the information. So the pros and cons of the system are Security Lines US provides instant access live to recorded data through your smartphone, your cell phone, tablet, or computer. Multiple groups can be given access. For example, if you wanted the volunteers that are doing the closing and opening of the parks, they'd have access to the cameras before they went into the system. They could see if there's anybody in the park. You could have Neighborhood Watch, who could have them review the information. Now, there are certain levels of access to the cameras. You can view, some can adjust and move the cameras, and some just have basic view. The LPR cameras requires a little oversight. The LPR cameras link to the county, state, and national database. The LPR cameras costs are somewhat prohibitive to create a shield around the city. We'd need a significant amount of cameras in order to do that. Here are some of the other cities with Security Lines US cameras. These cities include Arroyo Grande, California City, Compton, Grover Beach, Fowler, Hemet, Santa Maria, San Luis Obispo, Sierra Madre. And these are just some of the cities that use the system, and these are the cities where their police departments actually monitor the information coming and monitor the system. And some of them monitor because they have vacant commercial sites or vacant areas that allows them to get information where they've had fires in the past or cars go up in certain areas. You know, a good example would be if the council wanted to do a program on the top of Palm or on the end of Westwood. Those you could put the cameras in those mobile locations. And one of the neat things about the camera system is that it plugs into a light pole. That's the power source. You can take it down in 15 minutes and move it to another location. And so if you were trying to if you bought a camera for mobile site for illegal dumping or somewhere like that, you can certainly move the cameras in the multiple locations. So I sent word out to some of my city manager colleagues, and they had their police departments give me a call. And Fowler, the city police chief, said they work great as long as you can deliver power to them. Make sure the poles you plan on pursuing them are on your poles, or you'll have some issues with PG&E or Edison. We have a use agreement with Edison already, so that wouldn't be an issue. Our city manager and I are interested in purchasing 2 more pod systems in the beginning of next year. We are running a Wi-Fi and running the mesh that I talked about earlier, and this was Chief Michael Brand. And the next one was the chief of the Sierra Madre. We have used the Security Lines U.S. cameras products for a couple of years, and now I have been extremely happy with their product and their customer service. So that's just an example of what some cities are doing, with this particular camera program. So as the staff report indicates, that staff is here asking for some recommendations on the next steps. And if there are any questions, I can certainly answer those questions.
Thank you. Does council have any questions for Mr. Duffy? Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I have a comment and then a question. Early in my term, I was very concerned about the LPR cameras, was because I was reading a lot of information about, was this completely legal, violations. But then I stopped myself because that's for the courts, and the litigants to figure out, not for me. And so I changed, mid-course, that what I have to depend on in this forum is my contracted law enforcement. What they tell me is in their best interest of the city. But I guess when I'm looking at this item, and I don't see anything, my local law enforcement weighing in on this item. And the other thing that concerns me is I watch a program when there's nothing else on TV, and it's called Snapped, and it's about women who snap. But one of them was on a murder in North San Diego. There was jogging trails, rapes, and then 2 murders that they couldn't figure out how they were connected. Well, they finally found the connection, and the person was wearing the leg thing because he was a sex offender. But it turns out nobody in probation had the resources or were legally mandated to monitor this. So when I see, we can leave it for others, it's not going to be formally monitored or whatever, then I wonder, is this like the red light camera? All these cities bought the red light camera, and then they weren't really useful, or there were some problems, and then it was reading every day about all these cameras being yanked out that cost $500,000. So I think I really need to see my law enforcement personnel weighing in on this and how they feel, and also legal counsel. I really would not like lay people, including the council, having access to cameras. So I just would like to see some tightening up and some more backup information.
And we provided access to this particular camera system to the Sheriff's Department, so they've actually looked at it, and they are certainly willing and able to provide the council with some comments tonight regarding their preference and what they would like to do.
Lieutenant, would you like to make some comments?
Yes, well, and I'll start off by saying that should the council decide to do anything, we're ready and willing to support your decision. The Sheriff's Department has some, this is very hard to describe, we have some infrastructure problems right now that we're trying to sort through. The easiest way to relate this is your internet bandwidth at home. I have about 300 megabits of bandwidth at home. The Sheriff's Department is about 5. So we have very little bandwidth, and Mr. Duffy gave me access to the camera system. I installed it. I started using it. Bells, whistles, red lights went off, phone calls were ringing, and it's because our infrastructure isn't set to support streaming video right now. We do use ALPR cameras. ALPR cameras transmit a very small image, a very minute image that is stored in this database, and that is what we have had success with so far. On another note, from an investigative standpoint, we had a shooting here in Grand Terrace on November 18th. Days after I installed the software, I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to sit down and see if I could spot the vehicle traveling at night through that intersection. I spent about 2.5 hours looking at about an hour's worth of video, and I walked away with the same conclusion I had when I got there, and that is I had no idea if that vehicle went through that intersection or not. So there are some limitations, and if council would like, I do have Detective Grant Ward here who is prepared to give you a little bit of very quick briefing or training on the differences from an investigative standpoint between surveillance cameras and ALPR cameras.
Okay.
Okay.
Detective, please.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. My name is Detective Grant Ward. I'm assigned to Central Station. I've been a deputy sheriff for about 18 years, and in my experience, I've had a lot of investigative experience, including surveillance and ALPR. We call it ALPR because it's automated license plate reader. It's the same thing as LPR as we were discussing here. So if I may, LT, do we have the little switch there, sir? Sure. Yeah, clicker. So what I wanted to go over here is, well, what's the objective of having cameras in your city? You have benefits and limitations to each of the systems. The automated license plate readers are proactive data collection. They're real-time responses that include emails to all the people on the contact list, mainly dispatchers. So our sheriff's dispatchers would get an immediate email response of a vehicle as it passes through the intersection. Lag time is about 2 to 5 seconds, depending on the email traffic for the day. And that email response will notify them of whatever's already on our list. So what we call a hot list is every couple of hours, the California Department of Justice updates their database of every stolen vehicle within the United States. So it's not just California, it's every state, and the dispatcher would be notified whether or not a stolen vehicle has passed through your intersection, and deputies would be immediately dispatched. We also have the availability for customization of that list. For example, if we're tracking a burglary crew or a robbery crew, and we have a license plate or a vehicle that we know has already been identified as associated with the suspects, we can enter that and it will notify those people that are particularly involved in the investigation. So we know what's going on, yet it's not putting everybody on high alert. The images contain immediate workable leads. A license plate is a workable lead. A picture of a blue Ford Escort is going to be just that. It's a blue Ford Escort. A picture of a license plate is going to tell us who that vehicle is registered to, who the last owner was, and it will give us some more information as far as where can I go right now, where can I knock on a door and find out where their vehicle's at, who's in their vehicle, where were they going, where are they going now. And then it's a database used and shared with all law enforcement. So when these ALPR cameras are used, it's not just useful for me working Grand Terrace or Loma Linda or Highland or Central Station, just San Bernardino in general. When an investigator from out of the county is investigating something and they want to know something about a particular suspect vehicle that they've already identified, that vehicle passing through your camera system in your city will allow that investigator in Northridge to know that their suspect is now in Grand Terrace.
And also, it's identification in darkness. I don't know if you've had to sit through countless hours of surveillance like I have at nighttime just to say at the end of 8-hour run, say, yep, a car passed through. I don't know if it was a truck, van, I don't know anything, but I saw headlights. It's very frustrating and time consuming. Now, what we're limited with ALPR is it's limited to vehicles within the focal range of that camera. It will not capture foot traffic or the surroundings. That's where a combination of surveillance and ALPR is ideal. Surveillance cameras have huge benefits. Documentation of events with the option of real-time monitoring. The option of real-time monitoring is key here. You have to have someone actually monitoring it to have real-time monitoring. So that's a resource in and of itself. Ideal for monitoring large areas or foot traffic. Again, ALPR camera is only going to read license plates. It's not going to read the person who's standing on the corner with a handgun. Ultimately, surveillance cameras are a huge crime deterrent. They won't be doing those crimes in that area where they know a camera's in. Well, less likely to. People still do things, but the limitations of surveillance is passive and less actively monitored. It only provides it descriptively, just as I said, a blue Ford Escort, and it's limited by lighting. Even if you have a camera that has night vision, good luck trying to sort out what color a vehicle is using night vision. Now, what can we do with the info? ALPR provides real-time alerts of stolen vehicles, custom hot lists, historic traffic, travel patterns. So, for example, if we know every day a particular suspect travels through a particular intersection, well, guess what? I can park down the street and wait for them to pass by. Clear image of the vehicle for investigative follow-up and evidence. Evidence is the biggest key here. These are public streets. Every vehicle that's on these public streets are publicly identifiable and viewable by anybody who's standing on that street. The difference is we're recording it just like a surveillance camera would do. Surveillance, you can monitor locations for specific or all activity. You can't do that with an ALPR camera, but I can see what's going on all around with a surveillance camera. Multiple perspectives for greater detailed descriptions. This is really important because I get a snapshot of 1/10 of a second as a vehicle passes through an intersection. It's just enough to get that license plate and get a really good detailed picture of that. But guess what? As soon as that vehicle turns right on that intersection, then I see that it's missing its front fender. That's a huge investigative lead that I miss with the ALPR camera. Generate still images for investigative follow-ups and flyers, and we'll get to that in a second here. But ultimately, our goal here is evidence to prosecute these criminals. So when we're getting any information as a police officer, you want to know who, what, when, where, why. Well, who, with this is an example of exactly what I get emailed to my phone in real time every time a vehicle on a hot list anywhere in the county of San Bernardino runs through any of our cameras. That includes tow trucks, that includes other police agencies, that includes all light stands. I get this email on my phone. It's approximately about 20 to 30 every single day. But this is a stolen vehicle. It's a gold Saturn. It's stolen. What is it? Yeah, there you go. When? That happened on December the 3rd. Where? It was on Sterling and Baseline. Why? Well, I don't know. That's why I want to find out why that stolen car is going through there. So now what do I do as an investigator? Well, the deputies go out and they find it. That's another camera. That's a patrol car mounted ALPR camera there that captured the vehicle that went through that intersection. And then the vehicle is ultimately returned to its owner. And that's a picture of that same truck going through a different camera stand on the tow truck being returned to its owner. The other example is surveillance. Who, what, when, where, why? Well, who? This is a female in a dark blue newer Jaguar. What? She made a bomb threat. When? That was December 5th. This is last Saturday at noon at Upland City Library. Why? Well, I don't know. Well, let's find out. So as you can see, now what? That's what I have. I have a picture that was obtained by surveillance video. What I can do with that information is basically put this together. I could put a crime bulletin flyer to say, hey, has anybody seen this? And I wait. And I wait and I wait and I wait until hopefully someone knows who that person is, or one of my deputies or officers sees that vehicle, knows that person. I was telling my lieutenant before that through surveillance, we score with great detective work, or really, really lucky situations. That's what it is. So investigations are assisted with both. And this suspect withdrew about $50,000 cash from somebody else's bank account. He was captured on surveillance video. His vehicle was captured on the ALPR camera. From that vehicle, ALPR camera, I was able to tie it into being parked in a residential area in the city of El Monte. So I went to his house in El Monte, and I got everything that he did to operate his very, very large identity theft ring. And this was just a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. So these are real time, every day. This is what we do. It's an extremely useful tool for both I'm not an advocate for either one over the other, but I will say that if I was going to invest my money, what's your purpose? If you're going to put it in a street, you want a plate camera. If you're going to put it in a grocery store, you want a surveillance camera. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's nice about our ALPR technology is that it's already pre-installed and ready to use in all of our deputies' patrol vehicles throughout the entire county. We have access to that nationwide database. If a vehicle that we're looking for drives through the city of Highland, we would be notified of that. If we have a partial license plate, we can access that database for that. If we have a vehicle description, a color, a make, a model, we can access that database to start sifting through photographs in an attempt to identify a license plate. So it truly is an investigative tool, and both are truly investigative tools. As Detective Ward said, I won't lean one way towards the other, but I will say one is easier to use and, in our opinion, more thorough than a surveillance camera. I hope that clears that up.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions this time?
Well, I just wanted to clarify.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Didn't you not ask for 2 LPR cameras and we squeezed out one?
Yes, yes, it was a patrol-mounted camera system, yes.
But
Yes, so that is one that mounts on a patrol car that captures license plates as it's driving around.
And those are in both patrol cars that are in the city?
That's right.
Any other questions at this time? Councilmember Mitchell?
If we had a limited, we do have a limit budget, where would be your recommendations to place 2 LPR?
Well, the first one, Captain Dorsey and I have spoke about this quite extensively, would be Barton Road and Honey Hill. That's a great street leading in and out of the city, a tremendous amount of traffic. And when we had our portable ALPR trailer out there sitting for a couple of days, we were pretty impressed with the amount of investigative material it was collecting.
In a second location?
Well, remember, it is $15,000 per lane, so we would need 3 lanes of traffic at that intersection. Other intersections were towards Main. There's a variety of intersections that we could look at for installation. But again, we do know that ALPR technology is cost prohibitive. We do understand that.
What makes it such a higher cost compared to a surveillance?
That's a pretty technical question. I don't know if I can answer that. It's the type of camera, because we're not just recording, streaming video. We're actually training the camera to capture reflective license plates as it's driving by. So the camera technology is why it's more expensive.
So it is a difference in technology. It's not just a focus in on a particular area.
Right, yes.
And you would have to have some kind of data that's staying, because you're updating data from, is it CLETS that they call it, or whatever, from some data?
Yeah, it would be this nationwide database that all of the data dumps into.
Right, so you have some kind of temporary memory and
that's right.
And data manipulation. So this is just, again, something. Okay.
I'm sorry, I interrupted Councilmember Mitchell, and she had
I'm
another
sorry about
question. So, Councilmember Mitchell, go ahead. And
I-
then I'll come back to you.
I could have waited, but Lieutenant, in my non-expert opinion, I'm having a difficult time understanding how Barton and Honey Hill would be a prime spot opposed to like maybe Michigan and Barton.
Well, what's unique about Barton and Honey Hill is just that it funnels down into one lane in both directions, and that's kind of what we're looking for, is because taking those 2 lanes, funneling it into one. Now you're only looking at 2, maybe 3 cameras at the most, and we're able to capture the amount that much data as compared to other intersections where you would need 4, 5, or 6 cameras. That's why that intersection was unique to us.
So we need 3 there opposed to 4 or 5 on Barton and Michigan?
Barton and Michigan, depending on what direction, yeah, you would need up to 6.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, this is another item where I'd like to refer back to law enforcement and staff to look at the money and come back with a recommendation on the best use of it.
Pardon me, Madam Mayor and Councilmember Robles, we haven't taken public comment on this item.
Okay. Did you have further questions before we get to this point? Okay. I'll open public comment at this. Oh, excuse me. You have a question, Councilmember Hussey?
A question, the license plate reader, but wouldn't it be to our advantage also, of course, I work at a prison, cameras are everywhere there. Of course, we know who the bad guys are. But, it's, when they put that camera on that corner right there at Barton, first thing was, everybody's that blue light flashing, and like, oh my gosh, this is going to be another traffic cam or something. But it's a deterrent. Cameras are deterrents. Deterrents to prevent crime. Deterrents to tell you, hey, don't bring crime here, go to some other city. Just that deterrent alone is, my opinion, worth the cost. But then you have, I know you need the license plate reader to get it, but we also have people coming up here on bicycles. We have people walking up here. We have, transients that, go around and go through the businesses and stuff, so they don't have a license plate on their shopping cart. I haven't seen one on there yet, so I'm trying to find it. But, I think it's the best of both worlds to have both combined resources on that situation. I understand, as law enforcement, you want to pinpoint it quick and accurate as fast as you can. Also, well, where did he go? Like the scenario that happened last week. Cameras. Of course, everybody has cell phones and stuff. They're videotaping it. The location of the vehicle's right here. They went down that street or something. But I believe, with the cost that they have here, this is minute. This also highlights the license plate readers. So I'm all for the surveillance cameras, but I just, we have 14 days worth of data, and I know, Lieutenant, you went back for 2 hours to look, but if we had those other cameras with the license plate and you're able to see where they got out and where did they go from there, or where did they throw the items, or where did they stash, where they threw the handgun or something, that's where the surveillance camera is going to come in, correct?
Yeah, and I would agree with you. However, that was not the case when I was reviewing the surveillance camera footage. Like I said, I left after watching about an hour's worth of video over a course of 2 hours, not knowing for sure if that vehicle even passed through that intersection, because at nighttime the camera was so far back, the glare of the headlamps basically obscured the vision of that camera. The other part that is a hindrance is that we don't have the manpower to sit there and man it and watch live video, 24 hours a day.
But you're also talking about one camera versus 8 cameras. That system actually has a times 30 move forward. If you operate the system properly, if if a crime happened at 10 o'clock, you don't watch 4 hours of the video. You go to that 1 hour and you do it times 30 and you capture the data. So there's different ways to look at that. And the fact that the crime happened on Vivienda, and assuming that the person would come into town past the camera on Mount Vernon and Barton Road, probably wasn't going to work. It's a good idea to check it out, but with a system-wide approach, you probably have a different outcome when you have 8 cameras versus 1 in the heart of the city.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy. Any other questions before I open public comment?
Yeah, Lieutenant, I know you don't have, we don't do it either. We don't sit there in front of the cameras 24/7. If something happens, we always go back as the archives to go and, pinpoint the person. Every once in a while, we have an extra staff we're able to monitor it to try to prevent it. But I just think both of them together will, be a better tool instead of just one camera reading the license plate and then where to go from there. I just think, Mr. Duffy brought him up, and I've seen him in San Jose. It was a really neat system. It's cost efficient as far as you don't have the transformers. You put them on the light pole. You don't have to run any wires and that. And hopefully, I'm hoping for you guys that your infrastructure gets better. On the bandwidth on the sheriffs. My goodness, we need that really bad. Yeah. But I just think, personally, and working with cameras, that both those together will be a better factor. But You know, we want to go by your professional opinion. I mean, you guys, this is your tool, and we want to help you with your tools. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open public comment. I have one request to speak for, Patricia Farley.
Madam Mayor and council members, this is an alarming proposal to me. I like that we can get license plates and monitor traffic and stuff. But, you're talking, this is not picking this up. You're talking specifically about surveillance of private properties. In fact, what was described with the surveillance camera is that you can actually see people's goings and comings on their own private property. Talk where? Oh, now can you hear? Oh, sorry. Oh, okay. I couldn't hear the echo, so okay. I don't want anybody having a camera on me and my guests and my private property. But the other issue is that if you have a camera that's picking up goings and comings of people in and out of their private driveway, and then you're putting this on the internet or whatever, I do not consider the internet safe, okay? And I think it's putting people at risk if they're being stopped or something like that, or if you've got it in a public park and you're monitoring everything that's going on, what prevents the criminal from tapping into that and attacking, knowing who's there and what their goings and comings are? And the fact you can pull this up on the internet or iPads or anything, and even if it's supposed to be secure, we know that people can get into anything that's secure. That's already been proven. So I think this is really, surveillance cameras is ridiculous. If they read licenses and it only focuses on a certain spot or certain lane but isn't picking up private, people moving, I can see putting a surveillance by a bank, okay, but not by private properties. I think that's alarming. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak on this item, please come forward and state your name for the record.
Mayor, may I also add that we have Marcel Corby here from Security US, and she can also answer some questions from the council too, if they have any questions regarding the surveillance system and viewing of housing and stuff like that. She's certainly here to be able to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Duffy.
Jeffrey McConnell, Walnut Avenue. As I'm sure you've heard and or seen on Facebook, I've been a big promoter of ALPR for the last 2 years, working with Steve Dorsey to help promote it. And City of Highland, who got several ALPRs, I can't remember the number, through a grant, they're raving about how well it works up there. They're always catching criminals. I even spoke to a deputy at one of our Coffee with the Cops at McDonald's, and they were giving it lots of high praise too. The surveillance cameras at parks is a great idea. I think it'll cut down on the graffiti, especially if everybody knows they're being watched. The surveillance cameras at intersections might help mainly just in case of accidents, if it includes the sequence of the traffic lights, which I didn't quite see in those pictures. That would be more of a benefit to the motorists, but at least it would solve a lot of traffic collisions. You might want to include, keep an idea on the big picture of where we want to go, like the City of Highland is in other cities, as to where, I know we're limited on money this time, but what's the big picture? Because, we're living in a dangerous community, they may have picked up the shooters last Tuesday if they drove through an ALPR, because all you need is a partial description and a time frame. That's all they really need to be able to identify how many black SUVs went through at that particular time. So I think if you also incorporate both types of cameras over in a big picture as money comes through, when we develop along the freeway, et cetera, I think that would make this, as you see, the stats are going up on the crimes. That's, as he says, countywide. That would help not only us, but the entire county. Remember, they were private security cams, I believe, from businesses that caught the Boston bombers, if you recall that, as they were passing past their store. So other, like Great Britain, I saw a show once where they have the police actually, they monitor these things. But you might want to, if the back building's available, might want to include sheriffs in training or explorers to monitor cameras, if you want to come to that as an idea. I think I've looked at this and I think we don't need a whole lot. I think a sheriff, the cost of one sheriff for one shift for an entire year exceeds $250,000. I heard it's gone up. But if ALPR is, you said $15,000, some or more, I think. But if what's the lifetime of an ALPR camera? They work 24/7. You can get probably 15 for the cost of one 8-hour shift for 1 year. If they're good for 10 years, they're working nonstop, helping the sheriffs, and they don't take coffee breaks and donut breaks, or have to transport people down to, what? Okay, croissant breaks, I'm sorry. Uniforms. So, but that's my look at it. And when in the big picture, you look at the money, it's short now, but in the big picture, we could make this place super safe. Watch those numbers go down, and people come here not just because it's a bedroom community, because it's a safe bedroom community. That's one of the biggest things. You look at the stats, you look at the census, you look at everything, it's always one of the safest cities in the Inland Empire, incorporated cities. So I think we should approve whatever you want to do. This is great, move forward, but get a big plan, picture plan, and make this the safest city forever in the Inland Empire.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to speak during public comment? Please come forward and state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Ed Giroux. I live on Vivienda. There's no doubt. I don't like using the word surveillance cameras because they have great opportunities for other things. We use these cameras on Caltrans freeway system. I use them drastically for monitoring things when I have hazardous material spills or anything where I'm having a road shut down. I can monitor traffic conditions as it approaches and leaves, and we can make plans for diverting traffic from one location to another. There's no doubt last week played a big part with these cameras and trying to find somebody. If we have ability to be able, I have no idea what the budgets are for the city, but if we can afford these cameras, to have them in positions and places where we can go back and look at specific dates and times and attempt to locate something as bad as that happened in San Bernardino, I think we need to move forward if we can afford it. And as far as for the city purposes, it can be used for multiple reasons, as I just mentioned too. When you have disasters that happen in the city, I know we don't have traffic jams like we would usually have, but we do have incidents where the camera could be handy for the city when they're trying to handle some type of disaster. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments on this item? Okay, seeing no takers, I will close public comment and come back to council for more discussion and consideration of direction to staff. I know what we have before us is more of a discussion of a system that would be surveillance cameras. And my understanding is that these surveillance cameras, as they have been suggested, would not be pointed at public property and would not be looking at people coming and going from, private property. They would not be focused on private property of any kind, and they wouldn't be focused on the coming and going of private property.
That is correct, Mayor. And what the cameras have on them is that when they're set up, if they do a complete view, you can establish that when they come to a private property, the screen goes black. So they are never allowed to record a private residence. So if you're on the corner of a street that's a public street, and if you were to pan left near your house, you would just set that so it would automatically go black. It's part of the programming. So that's been built into the system, along with the camera being able to go dormant until there's any kind of movement or action that would occur. That cuts down on recording time. And Marcelle Cosby's here, and she would also tell you that of the agencies that she's working with, none of them do 24-hour monitoring of the camera. They may be at the best in a dispatch room with the law enforcement that they're passively viewing as just as you're viewing for parks and something like that particular nature.
How would you address the issue of somebody hacking into the video stream? And is this something that would be put on the internet in any way?
No, I don't think it's put on the internet, but we can have Marcel come up and she can tell you exactly the components of that. And her experience with anyone hacking into the system.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. The concern about hacking, it depends on how you want it set up. I believe when it comes also in answering the bandwidth issues, the unit that you have right now that we lent as a demo for you guys to try is using cellular, just like the cellular data that you have on your phones. So speed sometimes varies. And so that is when it becomes public. So when it becomes concern of how people hack into it, the recording device itself, it does not use, it uses what we call a Linux-based system, which is much harder to hack into. And so there's there's also a lot of different levels of passwords that have to get through before they get into the actual Linux system. Once they get into the Linux system, they'll also need to have like specific addresses as well as specific software to be able to view it. And even that software we don't readily give out. It's not something that you're able to just download off our website or off the manufacturer's website. So it is very limited. We've never, with the over 300 systems that we have out there, in Oregon, Washington, Arizona, and California, we've never actually had one hacked. If that answers your question.
In how long?
We've had this particular system that you guys are looking at now for about 3 years. Prior to that, the different models that we've had out, the pods themselves have probably been out there for about 6 years.
Okay, thank you. Council have any questions?
I have comments.
You have comments, okay. Any questions at this point? Thank you very much. Mayor Pro Tem, comments?
I think the reason I had early in the term problems with the ALR cameras was because of privacy issues. And the Sheriff's Department is, has told us in the past, and I have read the literature about, there's a bunch of protocols that are being put in place that protect the delicate balance between our need to know and people's rights to privacy. I also, coming from having a career in county government, and my husband working for information systems, I'm more comfortable, I think, with law enforcement coming to me and saying, this is, in our expert opinion, what materials we should use, whom we should contract with, and, for example, that we're contracting with you, so ISD, will be monitoring this stuff. I mean, because my husband worked at ISD and he had to go through a background check. And he had an ID, so if he breached any, confidential information, it was immediately tracked to him. And I just am uncomfortable when it feels like we're lay people trying to do law enforcement kind of work. So I would like to see this come back with the recommendation being what would be the best use of this money. What would be the bigger picture and incrementally funding this in future years till we get to the vision of a digital shield on the city. But I think we need to have to work in a very measured and careful way on that.
Okay. Any other comments? Councilmember Mitchell?
Mine were pretty much going to mirror the last maybe 3/4 of what Pro Tem Mayor stated. I think it definitely looking forward to the Sheriff's Department adding their recommendations and us looking at the possible ways to spend that first $50,000, and then as we go into 2016 and beyond, other purchases that we can make to get that virtual wall that we're looking to have. Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, you're welcome. And I guess Councilmember Hussey, you gave us your opinion earlier. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I agree with them, the sheriffs, what they what resources they want, but I'm also, believe personally, we're not violating anybody's, right, privacy. I'm all for a lot of tools to help law enforcement, not just mandate on one specific tool and that's all they have. I'm for backup on that system. $15,000 per lane, we have a lot of lanes in here. I think this as the deterrent right now is a cost efficient that's going to help us deter crime until, we buy a couple license plate readers here, we do a couple here, there each year. But in the meantime, we still have the surveillance to help cover and protect our city. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Wilson.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd just like to say a couple of things, and that is, the last 2 house inspections I did in my private circumstance, they were armed to teeth with cameras. This is where we are. This is exactly where we are. So if we think we're backing away from this, I would agree with Councilman Hussey that this is something we have to be able to afford, to be able to kind of phase in as we go and make it work for us. I think the comment about the Honey Hill and Barton Road situation is not lost. I understand what you talk about so far as the funneling. So basically you're coming down from several lanes into one lane and they have to go one after each other. And so it makes it much simpler to be able to try to do that, and it's more cost effective. So I'm, I hate to say it, but I'm in favor. I think it's a good concept, and maybe we just have to figure out how it's going to best serve us with your handicaps on the infrastructure.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that we want a long-term plan of how we would incrementally look at cameras and how they would work together, whether it's surveillance or LPR. But I'd also like us to make sure that our cameras that we have existing in the parks are part of this plan as well. What kind of direction would you like at this time?
I envision walking away from the meeting with some direction, either to move forward with the surveillance camera project or move forward with the basically working with the Sheriff's Department to take that $50,000 to, well, one way or the other, either move forward with purchasing the surveillance cameras or work with the Sheriff's Department to purchase 3 cameras for the LPR. I think that with those resources, you have to make a choice one way or the other. For example, my conversation with the city of Highland is that they budget $200,000 every year for their programs. Their LPRs are so successful that they've now gone into residential neighborhoods with LPR cameras. But the cost is $1 million or more what they've already incorporated. I think that tonight was the first night that I heard the investigators report. I thought that was excellent in terms of a hybrid system where you do a shield and you also incorporate the LPRs. You already have one LPR, and I think you authorized a second LPR with a potential grant coming forward in the future. So doing the shield and moving forward with a LPR incremental approach certainly gets you, I think, what the detective was talking about. I think the direction I was looking for was to say, come back with a proposal to purchase the surveillance program or move forward with the Sheriff's Department to locate and purchase the 3 LPR cameras.
Okay. So where are we, council? Would we like to implement the surveillance at this time with an idea for LPR later on? Or start with LPR?
No, I guess it'd be helpful if the recommendation was clear. Because I'm really sipping through this, trying to figure out what it is.
Well, to me, the recommendation was that they work well together, and it depends on what you're looking for.
Well,
One has more of a strength than the
in my experience
other.
doing agenda items, it wouldn't be written like this, is my point.
Okay.
you know.
Would I also, I guess, sorry, Mr. Wilson.
Councilmember Wilson.
As I just said, I think the LPR game plan and going and phasing forward is our best bet.
So are you, how about if we look for a motion? So would you say you're motioning to purchase LPR and move towards surveillance in the future?
I would certainly make that motion.
And I would second that motion.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to start with LPR cameras and move towards a phased approach with surveillance. Is there any more discussion? Councilmember Hussey.
So we're going to bypass if we do vote on this, we're bypassing the surveillance, going right to LPR, so the cost is going to be, we're using the $50,000 for the LPR.
That's the motion right now.
45.
And exactly how much coverage does that cover? What, just 3 lanes? 4
On the hill,
lanes?
that's what you're going to get.
Well,
Because I agree on.
Would you like to make an alternate motion?
I like to make an alternate motion to go with the surveillance and implement the LPRs as phase those in to work with the surveillance cameras.
Okay, so I have an alternate motion. Is there a second to that alternate motion?
Can we go back and, I need to ask a question still.
Okay, I've got one motion and a second. I've got an alternate motion. Is there a second to that motion, or are we going to let that one die? I'm going to second that motion. All right, question.
Thank you. I think we as a council agreed that we need further input from the Sheriff's Department. I'm confused to why we're not maybe doing that, why we're motioning to buy cameras right now when we feel like that's not the direction that we wanted to head in 10 minutes ago.
I agree strongly with that.
I don't take that same thought.
Okay, I'll make a third motion.
Now, we're going to go ahead and vote on that alternate motion at this time, and then we will vote on the first motion if we need to. So we have an alternate motion to start with the surveillance camera and then work with the LPR, and there has been a second, so please vote on that one.
I think I messed it up, Pat, sorry.
Okay, please revote.
Okay.
Motion passes, 3 ayes. Council members Mitchell, Hussey voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted no. Councilmember Wilson voted no.
Okay. And so that one passed, which means we don't have the first motion, that we don't have to entertain that one. But we do have a divided council. So that means, Mr. Duffy, when you come back, you have direction, but you know what the divided council is.
Absolutely.
Okay, so when you come back to us,
So when I come back to the council, it will come back with the procurement of the surveillance camera along with a phased-in approach for the LPR camera.
okay, and it sounds like we need some extra testimony, if you will, from our own law enforcement as to what they think of this package that's coming back to us.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you all for your discussion. And I'm going to recess right now for 7 minutes.
You know, I got more done when I was more done as the chairman. You know what? These guys age somewhere between 40s and 50. I was telling my wife this morning. And I feel that because I'm teaching these guys are sitting on this
Sorry, Kevin.
That's exactly
We got spoiled on last council meeting. Remember, it was like 40 minutes.
I almost stopped in the middle of this item.
I was getting confused. I thought we were.
All I did was push us to say, get back to us with the next one.
But this one, this particular matter, did you want me to pay for your sauce?
I know I have to.
You gotta pay $1 for every time.
Come to work.
Put $10 down. Screwing up so much.
Doesn't he need like a credit card? He should just have an open account. Get a PayPal account. How you doing? I saw that in around. Hey, you guys know any firemen? That's where one of their brothers died. You guys have any in the Lions Club? I bought it in Knott's Berry Farm because it was firefighter law enforcement. I was just bought
I hear you.
A lot of time they do that.
I feel bad.
You would be on
That's what it is. It's not
the fire department.
Just don't get it. February 9th.
No, personally.
So they kind of squeeze it together or something. We're going to cooperate.
Because the Reds, well here, Jim, see him give it to him, because the Reds for the fire department, blues for us.
And we also had another project inside the school.
How are you, sir?
We work at the fire department.
Merry Christmas. Thank you. Tell your wife Merry Christmas as well.
Merry Christmas to you, sir. Hey, Merry Christmas, sir. Yeah, they had a fire over there not too long ago. See, I went to Knott's Berry Farm because they had firefighter. So they ran out of law enforcement. So
You want us to wait for you?
thank you.
All right, we'll wait for him.
They're out there selling them for, and of course, the law enforcement, it was all out. So I still want to support the fund there, so I bought that.
status yet. Although it was
Jackie, there's food in here.
Oh my gosh, is there really?
Is it food or is it chocolate?
They don't
shot
even
of
matter.
There's a shot of whiskey.
Well, that, I don't know.
Irish coffee.
I mean, we can
There's chocolate in there.
right?
I wish there was a picture about my migraine. I got a migraine.
You want to ask for
Well, I met my standing goal for the day, 12 hours.
Yeah. Kind of thinking the same thing.
I was going to tell the public comment they're bringing in fresh trees yesterday one at the fire department.
What happened?
At the fire department, they brought in 100 fresh trees from Oregon yesterday.
Oh, really?
Picking ours up.
You should have picked up one.
They won't keep me up at night. Thank you.
It's just not supposed to be.
Brian is texting me what kind of chocolate am I eating. He sees this.
Okay, are we ready? Oh, she's still okay. What's that?
Yeah.
No fat.
Not fat.
The speech is going to be tomorrow, Doug. We're going to tell you.
That meant speed it up.
You're talking tomorrow, right? So we're going to go like this. I'm going to be back doing this.
No, I'm thinking about tomorrow night's little party.
What time does it start?
6.
I think like 5:30 or something.
I thought it was 6.
6.
Okay, well, I'm the first speaker, so I don't know.
She said potluck. I'm bringing pasta salad. So.
I'm disqualified.
I got a call, and I just asked her. Yeah. Well, she asked. I goes, it's potluck. I go, well, you want me to bring something? Well, if you want to.
Yeah, whatever.
She
Dessert's
doesn't
not
ask
a bad idea.
council to bring.
No, she didn't. I just.
Everyone else does, but every year I do.
We're so used to church. You bring every by potluck.
It's kind of weird to not bring something.
If I didn't ask my wife to bring it.
Yeah, it's right here in the room.
Community room.
It's kind of crowded in there.
Koji.
Cozy.
It's your last meeting for the year, right?
That's right. Well, we have to make it count.
I got to see Doug tomorrow night too, right? Are you done?
You get to see Doug tomorrow night.
I hear him speak. You probably give Morgan Freeman one for his money.
Brian's going to tell you to be good, Bill. He's watching us right now.
Yeah. Who is?
Brian's son.
So they were just.
Tell them I could use their help changing that water pump.
Excellent.
Yes, that's why I wanted to go back so you guys could track all these things. Yeah. And then bring it back.
I know that you will come back with something that is definitive.
Not what,
And we'll get everybody on board.
If it's not, it will not be here. Coming back.
Ethics thing, I did a 2 hour.
Oh, man.
Our ethics was different.
Oh, wow.
A lot of stuff.
I should have put the last piece in my mouth.
All right, enjoy it. We're here this late.
That's right. We love being here. All right, we will continue our normal session. Thank you, council, for your discussion on the last item, and I know that our city manager will come back to us with a comprehensive item that we will all have more further discussion on. We will go next to item 10. No, item 9. So I think that's 3 in the stock tonight. That public art in public places is going to be fully funded here in a little while. All right, so we're looking at an amendment to the statement of benefits to maintain compensation for grandfathered employees. May we have a staff report, Mr. City Manager?
Yes, Mayor. Within the last year, the council made some changes to the cafeteria benefit plan. Part of that was to move employees that were used to receive an annual compensation, complete compensation for their medical benefits. Although the changes occurred, those employees were moved to a new process, but the process does not include a cost of living increase for their benefits. So in order to try and retain their grandfathered status where the city paid the complete medical benefits for that particular employee, the item before you tonight is to make that adjustment.
Okay, any questions of staff at this time? Okay, and I have no request to speak in front of me. So I will close public comment and bring it back to council for consideration of a motion.
Motion to approve the resolution 2015, amending the statement of benefits effective December 8th. Let me restate that, effective December 8th, 2015, rescinding resolution 2015-10, effective December 8th, 2015.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNabo voted aye.
Thank you. Okay, item 10, Palm Avenue and Van Buren Street traffic measures with recommendations and requests for approval. May we have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Sandra Molina. I'm the Community Development Director for the City of Grand Terrace. And as indicated by the Mayor, this is a discussion to receive a status report and some preliminary recommendations regarding Palm Avenue and Van Buren Street. As some quick background, the council about a month ago had a discussion on citywide traffic-related items, not just speeding, but we talked about pavement management plan and some other items. But there was quite a bit of discussion regarding traffic-related issues on Palm Avenue and Country Club. On Palm Avenue and Van Buren Street. And if you recall, that discussion also included a potential stop sign at Palm Avenue and Country Club. But during the discussion, the council really asked us to look comprehensively at Palm Avenue and Van Buren Street, and not just the particular intersections that we had initially had discussions on. And so as indicated in the staff report, staff did discover that there were a number of traffic engineering studies done for various intersections along Palm Avenue, from essentially Country Club Drive all the way to Honey Hill Drive. And so those traffic studies looked at traffic volumes at the intersections. They looked at line of sight at the intersections, meaning if there was any obstructions, and then also looked at accident history. And based upon those studies that were done, staff is recommending, when we looked at it comprehensively, I have the chart that was in the staff report, but it's also up on the slide. We would propose on those studies to put a stop sign at Palm and Honey Hill Drive and Palm Avenue and Preston Street. And those stop signs, those locations in particular, because there's line of sight obstructions that cannot be physically altered, whereas originally with the stop sign at Country Club Drive, when we went back and looked at it, there are other measures we can take, such as there's vegetation in the public rights-of-way that can be reduced. And so, as that chart indicates, in some intersections we'll look at some red curbing and some will remove visual obstructions, but the stop signs we're looking at are at those two intersections of Preston Street and Honey Hill Drive. And this is, unfortunately, because it's such a long section, it's not very clear, but this is just an aerial of Palm, and these are the two stop signs we're talking about at Preston and at Honey Hill Drive.
Isn't there currently a stop sign at Honey Hill?
Well, we would make it a three-way stop sign. I'm sorry, I wasn't clear in that regard, Mayor, but what we would do is we would put stop signs east and westbound, and also here on Preston, there is a stop sign when you're coming southbound on Preston, but we would propose to put stop signs for east and westbound traffic. And then for the other sections, as I indicated, we would comprehensively look at red curbing, primarily along at the intersections, and then also we would look at areas where vegetation needs to be reduced or removed to clear visual obstructions. So in a sense, when we talk about Plum Avenue, we had the luxury, so to speak, of having some studies we could rely on. With regard to Van Buren Street, it's a little bit more challenging in the sense that there aren't any current studies that we can look at. But as indicated in the staff report, and Craig Newstetter with TEP Engineering is present, and so if there's any technical questions, I'm sure Mr. Newstetter can respond to those. But what we're doing with the consultant is evaluating Mount Vernon all the way to Observation Street. And if you recall, during the discussion last month, we talked about a speed profile that would be done, and that's been done on Mount Vernon. And surprisingly, it's showing that for the most part, there's not really a speeding issue. But that's not to say motorists aren't speedy. It's just that the majority of the traffic that was evaluated over that 24-hour period didn't show speeding. But what happens is because our local streets are 60 feet wide, and that ends up being a 36-foot wide curb-to-curb pavement width, that the wide street does lend itself to people wanting to drive faster. And so what we are doing, what our consultant is doing, is looking at a number of measures to reduce the roadway width, which would then impede speeds. And also part of that discussion when the analysis of all the potential measures are concluded would also include cost estimates. And so what I'm going to do here is, this wasn't in the staff report because we just got this information just recently, not in time for the report, but there's about 5 different measures that the consultant is looking at. And these, it's not to say that all these measures would be implemented, it's more of a menu of what would be most effective. What would be most effective, and then also looking at the funding considerations. So this is just an aerial of the street, and again, because it's such a long segment, it's hard to get closer than that and get the whole street. But what we're looking at, and I'll again show a visual that shows these areas, but potentially on Observation Street, where it turns into Van Buren, we would potentially look at slowing traffic through a knuckle intersection, and I can show you what that is in a few minutes. Also potentially to look at a median along the entire stretch of Van Buren, and that would essentially reduce the travelway width, causing drivers to slow down because of that reduced lane width. We can also look at intersections of Oriole, Crane, and Nightingale Way, reducing the curb radius, and by reducing that radius, it actually would slow down turning movements, so vehicles would be forced to slow down as they're turning. The other possible approach would be to extend the curb along Van Buren. And what this would do would physically reduce the travelway, and so I'll show you a visual of that. But basically what you're doing, if we extend the curb towards the street, you are reducing the travelway, and so that would reduce traffic speeds. And then also, the other thing we can look at is a median island, which would be on Van Buren between Crane and Nightingale, and that would also, again, by physically reducing the width of the street, you're causing traffic to drive slower, causing motorists to slow down. I apologize, this is not a real, again, because it's such a long segment, but what we have here is this is observation as it goes down to Van Buren. And what I try to do is put a legend for all the different discussions we were having. But so, for instance, observation in Observation Street in Van Buren, that knuckler that's being discussed would be right in here, and it would reduce the traffic width. The travelway median that would be striped, that's the red right in here. And this is obviously not the location where it would go, but this is the segment we're talking about where it would have a median in the middle, and that's just striped. The other thing we talked about is these are the intersections where the curb radius would be reduced. That would potentially slow traffic down as it's making turns. The modified curb extension, that's in blue, and that's probably a little bit harder, but this would be on both sides of the street. This is the limits of the proposal, but what we would do is physically bring the curb out and reduce the the width of the travelway. And then the median, wow, that's a really tough color to see, but the median is in this area as well, and that's a green, but that would be a raised median. So, again, these are potential measures that are still being evaluated. Our consultant is preparing the conceptual designs of what that would look like, providing cost estimates. And so at this time, for this particular street segment, we're still looking at concepts, but what staff would recommend is that as the council receives this report and sees our preliminary recommendations, that the council authorize the city manager to approve and implement final recommendations. And what we would do is, after those recommendations are implemented or authorized by the city manager, we would keep the council informed as far as the status of those particular improvements. I'm concluding my presentation. Again, Mr. Newstetter is present in the audience, and I'm happy to respond to questions, as is Mr. Newstetter.
I have a question about what you're recommending. So we're receiving the status report, and that makes sense, and the preliminary recommendations. But you're asking us to authorize the city manager to implement something that we don't have final costs on.
Well, yes, and what we could do potentially, Mayor, is look at this as two separate recommendations if that's if there's a greater confidence or comfort level with that. With regard to Palm Avenue, because we have the studies, it's pretty straightforward as far as what the recommendations are, because basically this is what we would recommend. The cost, I don't expect them to be very significant because we're talking about sign installation and we're talking about striping. The signs our city maintenance staff can do. Street striping, we would contract that out to the lowest bidder. So there is some cost, but I don't expect it to be significant.
For the other measures, as you're looking at them, to me it raises a lot of questions as to on-street parking and other things that the neighbors would probably really want to know about. And so to just have a preliminary on the ideas, and I like all the ideas that came back and the idea of exploring them further, but I think that there needs to be quite a bit more exploration before any of them are implemented.
Yes, Madam Mayor, and that's why it may make sense to take a two-tiered approach in that it may make sense to authorize the city manager to implement the Palm Avenue recommendations, but what we may want to do is come back to the council with some more input, or I should say with the concepts more developed with those cost estimates. And also you raise a good point that some of these things, and when speaking to our consultant, he also indicated that the council may want to consider neighborhood input. So.
Okay. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Mayor. One of the things that we were given direction to do at the last meeting was there was some discussion about if we could bring this report back in time for your one and only December meeting. And so when we believed that it was going to be a swift resolution, the recommendation was we'll bring it forward, there'll be one or two suggestions, get the council's opinion, and I could just make that movement. But it appears to me that the recommendations that we have before you, one, are not going to be done in a matter of 20, 30 days because it's too comprehensive. So our original recommendation was to allow the city manager, and we thought it was going to be an easy resolution. We didn't want to waste that December time frame. So I would say that I would concur with the comments that I've heard from the mayor that the Van Buren Street recommendation come back to the council in January with the final resolution, because we originally thought that we were going to be able to resolve the issue after the speed study was done. And it appears to me that the slides that we have on board and the recommendations are going to be far more extensive than we can accomplish in 30 days. So it just makes sense for the council to bring it back to the council on January 12th with an actual recommendation for the council to make that decision.
Okay. Does council have any other questions of staff? Councilmember Mitchell? Okay. Yeah, Mayor Pro Tem Robles.
Well, I understand we can't spend money making signs detailed to the point where I really get it. So I'm assuming on mediums, I'm not the engineer, so that's measured out and that'll work, but I don't know what a knuckle, it still doesn't make sense to me what a knuckle deal is on observation.
So when it comes back, they need better pictures.
Well, what is a knuckle?
The intersection of...
Please state your name for the record, sir.
Madam Mayor, members of council, my name is Craig Newstead. I'm a consulting traffic engineer. And to respond to your question, what is the knuckle? The knuckle is, we have the intersection of observation at Van Buren, and if you've been at that location, you'll see that the intersection is flared out to the south and the east, and actually that increases the radius for vehicles to make the turn and encourages vehicles to make that turn at a higher speed. Now what we're going to be recommending for consideration is a knuckle channelizer. And the channelizer, we have some design concepts which in fact do two things. They narrow, reduce the radius for the turn, meaning that the cars are going to have to go slower to make the turn, and they're going to reduce the travel way in the area for making that turn. So it's a ribbon type median that'll be constructed or will be presented for consideration, a ribbon type median that'll go around the curb. There'll be some additional striping, some what we call box dots, so to ensure that the vehicles, if they try to swing out, they're gonna encounter this bumpy ride, and so it's gonna encourage the drivers to stay within a very limited travel way, and they will definitely slow down in making that maneuver. So, and that's a relatively, in the overall scheme of things, it's not a significant cost. There is definitely a cost associated with it, but it's going to be highly effective in terms of reducing speed. Now, the question that I raised with Sandra is it something that the residents are going to be, are they going to fall in love with something like that? And I don't know that. So that's going to be a topic for discussion.
And thank you, because when you look at the map, and I guess that's where Dennis Kids Groves are right there. It already curves, so I wasn't getting conceptually what we were doing.
No, yeah, you can see it's a curve, but it was actually designed to take that turn at a higher rate of speed. I mean, that was the engineer's intent in the way that you have that knuckle, the flare out of the street. Now, if that curve was tight, if we did the measures that I described to you previously, the drivers are going to have to make that turn at a much slower speed.
Thank you. Any other questions of staff at this time? Councilmember Mitchell, did you have a question?
I actually have a couple questions and a couple comments. Sandra, I think that you opened up with saying there wasn't a speed issue on Oriole and Van Buren. So can you clarify what that means? That do we not have residents speeding, or are you stating that the posted speed is conducive with what the study shows that the speed should be?
When the speed profile was done, it's done over a 24-hour period, which is measuring speed limits of vehicles on that street segment. Mm-hmm. What that found is that for the most part, the 85th percentile of all the traffic that goes through that segment are within that 30 miles per hour. There's not a significant speeding issue. That's not to say that there may not be motorists at speed, but when you look at that data over the time, they're falling within that 30 miles per hour.
Provide some clarification. Okay, yeah, as Sandra mentioned, we did what's called a profile study to capture the speed characteristics of vehicles over a 24-hour period. What that speed profile study identified was that the current posted speed limit, which is correlated with what's called the 85th percentile of vehicles going down the street, that speed limit continues to be defensible. Now, that's relevant to the 85th percentile, but there's still, I don't want to get too much into the statistics and math of this, there's still about 20% of the vehicles which are traveling on that street at a speed which I would consider excessive. So the finding was, the speed limit that we have on the street is appropriate and enforceable, but there are still a significant percentage of vehicles that are driving at an excessive rate of speed, which I would say is over 10 miles per hour over the speed limit.
Thank you for that. I guess my thought was, when I opened with that comment, was originally the issues were around that people were not stopping at the stop sign or flying through it. They weren't prepared to stop. So to me, it wasn't necessarily about a speeding issue more than it was about an awareness issue or a respect issue for the stop sign. And I think we got onto the conversation about taking a look at observation leading into Van Buren as a possible measure to calm the traffic or slow the traffic. And I feel like we're getting off course just a little bit. We need to go back and focus on the four-way, which is our primary concern. And maybe we do it through all these different measures, or maybe we even look at installing some stop signs at those two streets between Oreo and Van Buren to calm that traffic. Maybe it's not necessarily, because I drove it 3 or 4 times in the last couple of days just to make sure I got a good view of everything, kind of taking a few different things into consideration. But going, heading south or coming onto Van Buren, if you're headed north, the 10-mile-an-hour speed signs, you can see them, but you don't really pay attention. They're not apparent if you're not looking for them, and I think we're all too familiar with traveling the roads that we don't pay attention to them. But maybe there's some things that we can do before we get to the knuckle and some of the other things to, like, maybe do some striping or something on the streets to build that awareness again. Maybe there's still things that we could look at.
When we come back on January 12th, we can look at that as well. Again, I think that these potential alternatives all serve to slow that traffic that then gets to that stop sign intersection. It would be a slower speed, but we'll take a look at that.
I'm thinking there has to be a quarter-mile distance between that. They can rebuild their speed by the time they round that corner. It doesn't make any sense to me, maybe because I'm not an expert.
We'll reevaluate that.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, at this time, I have no request to speak forms in front of me, and I have no on the way. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this item before we come back for comments? Okay, I'm going to close public comment, bring it back to council for comments and consideration of motions.
So we're looking for, basically, we can approve the recommendation to install the stop sign at Palm and Palm Avenue and Honey Hill, and look at community input for the following: red curbing, remove visual obstructions, and so on. Mayor,
I believe they were looking for approval or authorization to put in the stop signs at Palm Avenue and Honey Hill Drive, and Palm Avenue and Preston Street, and to remove visual obstructions at the intersections of Palm Avenue, Observation Drive, Paradise Street, Palm Avenue, Dos Rios, and Palm Avenue, Country Club Drive.
So would that also include the authorization of the city manager to approve and implement final recommendations, or
for that particular one, and then come back to us with
the red curbing
recommendation for Van Buren Street? So it was approving recommendation of everything for Palm Avenue, and it was giving direction to come back for the Van Buren Street.
I thought I understood, I'm sorry, Mayor, I thought I understood that with Palm Avenue, we were going to look for community input on the red curbing since it would affect them? Is that not correct?
What staff was requesting is that the council authorize the city manager to implement the recommendations shown in the chart in the staff report, which would include the stop signs, the red curbing, and removal of visual obstructions.
I don't know if I'm comfortable with that.
Councilmember Wilson.
Ms. Molina, I have a question about the thought pattern of the Palm Avenue and Preston Street stop sign. The only thing I'm concerned about there is a stacking situation. Is that, I guess I'd like to refer to Mr. Newsteader, because I know that intersection's is offset, and wondering how the stop sign's going to affect the stacking.
Yeah, it's been a couple years since we actually reviewed that issue, but I do recall that one of the issues on our mind was that the possible stacking and conflict there. We studied that. My conclusion is that while there's going to be a nominal amount of stacking, it's not actually going to interfere with the flow of cross-street traffic.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. The last time this agenda item was here was for us to give guidance. And I don't understand what the guidance being sought was, because the curb was already painted red, was already implemented. So I don't understand.
Portions are. Yeah, I agree. I saw it yesterday, too.
I can respond to that, Madam Mayor. If you recall, when this discussion started, it was staff's, the direction staff received was to look at the issue at a particular intersection, which was Country Club Drive and Palm Avenue. So when we looked at that intersection, the stop signs was one of the alternatives to address the visual obstructions. And so we were moving forward with that. If you, when we came to council on November 10th, we said that that was going to be installed shortly. And so we did begin the work to, we did the red curbing, because once you have that stop sign there, you want to put red curbings in proximity to the stop signs. But as we discussed this, the council asked that we look at Palm Avenue comprehensively, because the discussion was, what about this intersection and that intersection? So when we looked at it, as we looked at the studies and as discussed in the staff report, one of the things we did not want to do is have stop sign, stop sign, stop sign. So we looked at where do we absolutely have to have a stop sign, because we cannot make any alterations that would alleviate the visual obstructions. And so it was Preston and Honey Hill. But the other, so what the approach we're going to take is at Country Club Drive, we will go ahead and look at removing the vegetation to reduce those obstructions. And so that red curbing that was done was in anticipation of the stop sign that's now no longer going to go in there. So part of what we'll look at with the final recommendations that the city manager will authorize us to implement is reevaluate the red curbing along Palm Avenue. So,
and the curbing, the red curb was completed before we came to the council with that. So we stopped after the discussion. We stopped all movement and then assessed the entire area, and now we're back to the council.
So the red curb may go away.
Yes, some of it will go away, but we can't say all of it's going to go away, because we're going to reevaluate that in relation to intersections and driveways and things like that.
Okay. So at this time, you're saying that you would like direction and authorization to install 2 stop signs on Palm Avenue and readdress the need for red curbing.
Yes. So are you taking it one item at a time?
I'm taking one item at a time.
Yes. And that would be what we would like directions to.
Okay.
So moved.
And I'll second.
All right, it's a motion and a second to install 2 stop signs on Palm Avenue and reevaluate red curbing and remove obstructions. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye.
Okay, and so I think for the second item, we're just going to receive the status report and preliminary recommendations for Van Buren Street and expect something to come back to us in January. Okay. So,
Motion.
you want a motion on that? No, okay. All right, so I will remind my colleagues I've moved item 3 to right after item 10, which is the amendment of all on-call traffic engineering services contract with Transportation Engineering Planning. That is Mr. Newstetter's company. And we are looking at a request for an increase. And so I would like a staff report on that with respect to what is it we have contracted right now, and why are we having a request for an increase in contract?
Okay, so we are currently under contract with two traffic engineering companies, TEP and Webb and Associates. Each is for $10,000. And what we've been doing is using Webb with development projects, and so the cost of Webb is borne by the applicant as those projects come forward. But with respect to TEP, it's a $10,000 contract was the initial contract amount. TEP assists staff with regional forecasting, the regional transportation plan that Sandbag does essentially almost every other year or so. TEP also prepares the Measure I capital improvement program for the city, as well as the Measure I capital CPNA, the capital project needs assessment. So they do the funding evaluation. They, as we give them the projects, they plan out the five-year program, and so that's a substantial amount of work that occurred already, and that work that they've done has expended the majority of the funding or the contract amount. And so as we continue to ask TEP to do additional analysis for us, for instance, the staff report indicated that this project we just talked about, the previous item, that's part of that, but as other items come up, we do ask TEP to do evaluations, whether it's street intersections or sometimes we get line of sight issues in other areas of the city, and so this amount would take us through to the end of the fiscal year.
Are there any questions of staff on this item? Okay, and I have no request to speak forms in front of me, so I will bring it back to council for the consideration of a motion on this item.
Make a motion to increase the TEP purchase order by $10,000 for increased traffic engineering consulting services, and 2, authorize the city manager to execute the contract.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and second. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McAdoo voted aye.
Thank you. On to item 11, which is approval of contractor agreement between the City of Grand Terrace and Tree Pros, Inc. for on-call citywide tree trimming services. May we have a staff report, please?
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council. Adrienne Freeman, City of Community Development Department. Excuse me one moment. This staff report supports goal number 2 of our vision statement to maintain public safety by investing in critical investments to infrastructure. I would like to also mention that Mr. Antonio Gomez, who is the area manager for Tree Pros, Inc., is also here tonight, and he can assist with questions if there are any. The City of Grand Terrace has been using an informal bid process during emergencies to secure the service of arborist firms for tree trimming and tree removal services. It is imperative that the city formally secure a vendor for on-call city-wide tree trimming services, so the city will be prepared as inclement weather approaches, particularly El Nino. Related but separate from this on-call tree trimming service. We want to make sure the council is aware that a request for proposals has been issued for an arborist to provide citywide assessment of the city trees and provide a formal schedule for tree maintenance based on the health of our city trees. So the proposals for that specific RFP are due next week. So that will follow. But for this item, on October 26, 2015, a notice inviting bids for citywide on-call tree trimming services was advertised on the city website and emailed to various arboricultural firms. 2 proposals were received, one from Tree Pros, Inc. and the other from West Coast Arborists, Inc. The bid schedules from the 2 vendors were analyzed, and the lowest responsive bidder was Tree Pros, Inc. If you will please note on the dais, you've been provided with Exhibit A, the scope of work, and please note that that scope of work will be included, of course, in the agreement. It was not in the initial packet, but this will be in the agreement as well. As a brief overview, the scope of work includes full trims, clearance trims, tree and stump removal, root pruning, and tree planting of trees in the public right-of-ways and on city-owned property. Tree Pros, Inc. currently provides tree trimming services to the County of San Bernardino, the Jurupa Community Services District, and the Stater Brothers Markets Property Management Group. Staff is recommending this city award a contractor agreement to Tree Pros, Inc. in the amount of $15,000. Staff is happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Does council have any questions of staff at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will open public comment, and I have one request to speak form, and that's from Patricia Farley.
I'm particularly concerned about the tree trimming in Grand Terrace because, for instance, on my property, there are trees that I do not want somebody just coming and trimming. My family has maintained them for many decades, and I want them to be trimmed in a certain way, and I own the trees. Now, when Grand Terrace became a city and in certain areas, apparently they planted trees and then they tell the residents they're obligated to maintain them, and they can't take them out without permission, which I think there are issues with that, but if somebody's maintaining a tree, if they're required to maintain it, and then somebody comes in from the city and decides to trim on it, I think people need to know who's going to be trimming. I know of a place where somebody spent several $100s trimming a tree, and then somebody came by from the city and cut it down. And like when a branch blows off or a big branch blows into the street, I understand you might need to clean it out of the street, but if the person who has the residence wants to cut it down, or trim off the broken branch or whatever, it concerns me that somebody will come in from the city, do it, and then send them a bill. And I want to prevent people from trimming trees on my property without my knowledge and permission, and I know that's been a problem in the past, and I know people who have had to pay when the branch fell right out in the street. So, and then if somebody's maintaining a tree and they're held responsible for it, but the tree is pulling up the sidewalk, and it doesn't quite make sense, and I'm concerned. And it sounds like you're not paying as their emergency calls. There's a flat fee of $15,000. Is that a correct understanding? Because that seems a little funny to me.
I believe that there was a schedule of what the different trimmings cost.
Right,
But just to
but
be,
you couldn't
can I
spend more than
clarify from you?
$15,000.
Have you had people from the city come and trim your trees on your land. Is
Years
that what I'm
ago-
understanding you to say?
Years ago, we had maintained them for decades, and there are trees. We've had them before Grand Terrace became a city. And one time, one day just showed up and started trimming the trees, and my mother went out and stopped them. But in particular, the palms have to be trimmed by people that are very good at it with sterilized saws, because you can damage the tree and cause an infection. And then if you do that, how can you require the resident to pay for something that somebody damaged because you got the cheapest price on an arborist?
Okay.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Thank you for
Okay,
your
thank
comments.
you.
I appreciate that. Okay, Analyst Freeman, I have a couple questions for you then. Do you envision that we will be going and trimming trees on private property at this point?
What the bid called for, it was for trees in the public right-of-way.
Which would be parkways?
And city-owned property, yes.
Okay, so the parkways that, and I understand that on some of the parkways, the trees are supposed to be the responsibility of the residents that live there.
Madam Mayor, if I may, I think that this is for emergency on-call services, so if a tree in the public right-of-way, which is also the parkway, were to fall because of wind conditions or storm conditions, then we can call out the vendor to remedy that situation. When we move forward with the other RFP, then that's a discussion regarding general maintenance throughout the city. And I think that at that point, that this conversation probably might be a little bit more appropriate. But for this is just on-call services.
Okay.
Just for clarity.
For clarification, I appreciate that very much. Okay, did you have something else that you wanted to add? Excuse me, I was talking to Analyst Freeman, thank you.
Oh, no, if you all have any other additional questions, the vendor is also here to answer.
Okay. Any other questions, council members? Mayor Pro Tem.
I'm wondering, do we have easements on her property?
Madam Mayor, if I may, Mayor Pro Tem. I can't speak to this particular property without actually looking at maps, but just generally, you look at a residential street, approximately 12 feet from the curb face, going back 12 feet, that's still city property, so that's city right-of-way, referred to as city parkway at some times, but that is city property.
Right, because that's the standard that I'm accustomed to. Yes. So my feeling is, it doesn't matter whether we're a city or not. When the house was built, we have an easement, right? Any house. If a house was built in 1950 and we became a city in 1978, we have easements.
More than likely, yes.
Councilmember Hussey, did you have a question? Okay. Any other questions at this time of staff? Okay. Then public comment has been closed. We've had our discussion, and I will consider it a motion at this time.
A motion to approve a contractor agreement between the City of Grand Terrace and Tree Pros, Inc. for on-call citywide tree trimming services and appropriate $15,000 from Gas Tax Fund 16 and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNamara voted aye.
Okay, thank you. And item 12 is Grand Terrace Facility Use Policy clarifications. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, Mayor, this was just simply a clarification of the use of the city's facilities. The senior center does have specific issues regarding the off-hour usage, and the facility, the facility policy does allow for the city council or the city manager to modify or waive the policy. And so just for clarifications, we've received a number of inquiries regarding the use of the senior center by other clubs throughout the city. And I just wanted to bring the policy back before the council to let the council know that I would be consistently applying the policy. And one of my major concerns is that under the current policy, the senior center cannot be used off hours. And one of my concerns would be is that the use of the senior center kitchen, because that is used to prep and serve the senior lunch program. And one of their concerns is that if anyone were to use that, the family services, which we have a contract with, they're the ones that are actually get spot inspections by environmental health services. So their concern would be that if we allowed others to use that kitchen, that it would compromise the senior meals program. And so the policy is pretty clear. I think that we can work with groups to use the facility, and there's a hierarchy in terms of the use that's laid out within the policy. But I wanted to let the council know that I would be consistently applying the policy as it is written.
Any questions of staff?
I have one.
Councilmember Mitchell.
Thank you, Mayor. You had referenced use of the facilities or facilities. Would that include paying a fee, or I guess my concern is that we start acquiring income or generating income, and how that may affect some of the grants or some of the other things that we've received for buildings.
Right.
So, or could it be written that those fees would cover additional cleanup services or whatever to the building? How would that look?
Sure. So one of the concerns that's duly noted is that the city owns the land, and the community, the Corporation for Better Housing actually owns the structure that's leased to us, then it's leased to them. It's turned over to us in 65 years. Part of that was done with some bond funding, and so what we're saying here is that if anyone were to be charged for the use of the senior center, we would use those funds to help support the ongoing utilities and stuff like that we spend for that facility. The use of the facility during normal business hours is an acceptable use. It can be, as long as it doesn't impact the senior center services. It is the off-hour use that can be somewhat a little more problematic, because all the buildings owned by Corporation for Better Housing, and all the fixtures were supplied by Corporation for Better Housing, and they are responsible for the replacement.
They took a number of those fixtures out.
Okay, but their contract requires them to replace and upgrade any of the remaining items that they have in the facility.
Okay. You had a question, Councilmember Hussey?
Yeah, how does the seniors feel? I mean, I don't want their life interrupted for activities that might happen every week, or family visits. Do we have adequate parking? I mean, this is their home, and I don't want to feel like we're bullying them and taking their home. Because they pretty much have their routine, their system there. That's my main concern on.
Right, and this policy that you have before you, I'm just basically saying I'm going to support the existing policy. And what normally happens is that they don't come to the city manager's office. They actually go and they work with the senior center group, and they have been granting the use of the facility. And so I've had a conversation with the senior club to say, it's okay to grant the use, but they have to have insurances and other things of that particular nature. So in the policy, it's a priority. And any program, the seniors programs are first. And we're not going to grant anything that's going to disrupt their normal process.
So on page 15 of the facility use policy, it says the use of the senior center and Peta Park outside of operating hours is not permitted. Yet on the packet page 135, your staff report, you're talking about authorizing use of senior center during non-operating hours where the organization provides insurance and are not requesting kitchen use. So
Well, that policy.
I'm looking at package page 135 under authority to waive or change, and I'm looking at packet page 151 under Grand Terrace Senior Center and Pettit Park. And so I guess my question to you is that, are you wanting to come back with a change to the facility use policy to allow for the authorization in non-operating hours for organizations that have the appropriate insurance coverage?
Right. So the policy itself, the way the policy is written, the city council or the city manager can make modifications to the policy. And so as the requests were coming in, I wanted to come back to the council and say, this is how I, as an individual, as a city manager, would be handling this process. If they have the proper insurances and they are not disrupting the senior program and it falls within the rest of the policy, then I would be granting that. But if it's for something that is a party that wants to use kitchen and everything else, I'm going to just simply across the board say, no, I'm going to uphold the policy as it is written. If you want me to come back with a concrete policy, I can do that, but the way the policy is currently written, they can go to the council or they can come to the city manager, and I'm just saying this is what I'm going to do if they come to me.
Well, if they come to you and you allowed them to do that, you are not following the policy, in my opinion. I would like to see that if that's going to be the opportunity for them to come and get permission to use outside of senior center hours, that it states in the policy that you're able to grant that permission.
And it does.
Not on page 15 of the policy package, page 151.
Okay, so page
151, package page 151.
144, page 144. Number 8, authority to waive or change.
Okay. City council or city manager may make an exception to any of the facility use rules and regulations, including rental rates, based on special circumstances. And so the special circumstances that they've asked?
When they arrive, but I guess what I'm saying is my answer is going to be basically, let's keep the facility use as it is, unless there's some special circumstances. But what I wanted to do was to show the council that I was going to be consistently applying the policy. And I know that there seems to be a flurry of requests now to actually use the facility, and I wanted to make sure the council understands that if they come to me, I'm going to say, hey, here's the policy. And if they are insistent, I'm going to say the other option is to go to the council and have the council waive the policy.
Okay.
We'll go from there.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. I have no request to speak for him, so I'll bring back to council for direction to city manager. Are we receiving and filing, or are we giving any other direction?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion that we receive and file this item.
Others in agreement?
I'll second.
Okay, motion and second to receive and file.
Motion passes 5 ayes. Council members Hussey, Wilson, Mitchell voted aye. Mayor Pro Tem Robles voted aye. Mayor McNabo voted aye.
Okay, thank you. City manager, do you have any further communications for us tonight?
I'll make it very brief. There's no council meeting, there's no second council meeting, obviously, this month, just letting the public know. Also, that on December the 16th, 2015, VTrans will have a board meeting, and they will be recommending funding for the city's senior ride program. That's point-to-point collection from senior residents to the senior center for activities for the day. Also, the October council roundup is out, and it went out an e-blast also. There's also various copies laying around in various facilities. We'll take some over to the senior center also. And then also the City Hall holiday hours will start on December 23rd. City Hall will be closed until January 4th, 2015, but there will be support staff to handle any operational public works issues if they do occur.
All right, thank you very much. So tonight we are adjourning in the memory of Consuelo P. Ramirez and in honor of the victims of the shootings in San Bernardino on December 2nd. Our next regular city council meeting will be held on Tuesday, January 12th, 2016 at 6 p.m. Agenda item requests must be submitted in writing to the city clerk's office no later than 14 days preceding the meeting. Thank you, council, for your participation. Thank you to staff. And thank you to those who came out and spoke. We are adjourned. Merry Christmas.